Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another informative and awesome draft expert YouTube video. I hope you all have had a fantastic. I don't really know how long it's been since the last time we've had a video, and I do apologize once again for not having any visual qualities. It's just been it's been a crazy time. Let's just put it like that. Let's just call a spade a spade. It's been a crazy, crazy time. Whether it be with like house issues, whether it be with freaking snow, it doesn't matter what it is. There was just a bunch of stuff going on. So I do apologize for not having a more visual aspect. So kind of treat this like a podcast today. And speaking of, you can check out a link to the Logan Blackman Show podcast down in the description below, sorry. And with that, you can also check out links to all the different social media accounts, but most importantly, you can check out a link to the blog post at theloganblackmanshow.com where you can read Mock Draft 1.0. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited for this video. And if you remember, like a month ago, maybe probably close to exactly a month ago, we released a pre-postseason mock draft. And that mock draft wasn't really like an official mock draft. Like, it was a mock draft by name, yes, but it wasn't in the mock draft 1.2.3.0 or whatever you want to call it era. It was just a quick little experiment because, you know, we had the first 18 picks in the draft. We didn't know what picks 19 through 32 were going to look like. So we thought it'd be best. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering over my words. I'm tired. I'm tired. I just got done shoveling the driveway, so I'm a little tired right now. But regardless, we thought it'd be a better idea just to wait it out until the whole Super Bowl's done and we know the order and then all that great stuff and more things. Like, you get more, like, coaches get hired and stuff like that. Coaches may get fired in that time frame. GMs might get fired in that time frame. It's just a matter of, like, when's the best time to do it? And I know it's a little bit later after the Super Bowl than what we would have probably liked it to be because the Super Bowl obviously ended last Sunday. So not just past Sunday, not the 15th, but the 8th. It's been a while since the Super Bowl's been going on. And it's February 20th right now. It's been 12 days since Super Bowl 60 where the New England Patriots got smacked by the Seattle Seahawks by a score of 29-13. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. We did a whole breakdown of the Super Bowl and everything like that. You can check that again down in the description below. And I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and so I have a very fond time of watching the Patriots get absolutely blasted. Now, it was a kind of a catch-22 situation. I don't know if I'm using that right, but it was kind of like a catch-22 situation where, like, yes, I'm loving watching the New England Patriots get blasted by the Seattle Seahawks, but at the same time, I'm watching the New England Patriots play in the Super Bowl. Why are the New England Patriots back in the Super Bowl? They dominated not just my life, but everybody else's life as well, going to multiple Super Bowls, winning 6 of them. And now, after being bad, having the 4th overall pick in the draft, they are now back in the Super Bowl. They had a whole time period with Cam Newton, Mac Jones, Matt Patricia, and Joe Judge as co-offensive coordinators, 4th overall pick with Gerard Mayo. Like, they were down in the dumps. And they went back to the Super Bowl before I got to watch my Buffalo Bills go to a Super Bowl with Josh Allen. So again, it was fun watching them lose. It was fun watching them get absolutely blasted. It looked like two teams playing completely different sports out there. The Patriots were completely outmatched in that game, and it was awesome. But it was in the Super Bowl. So that kind of hurts my feelings as well. But now with that out of the way, we now know what the complete order of the NFL draft is. Picks 1 all the way down through 32. And some of these picks are a little bit easier than others. And I think the thing that makes this a little bit more difficult, and I don't know if you guys can agree with me on this, but there's not a lot of quarterbacks that will be going in the first round. At most, there will be 2. But depending on which mock draft you look at, there could only be 1 quarterback going in the first round with the next guy going in the early on in the second round. Like, you're talking about Ty Simpson going 33rd overall or something like that. But most of them, you'll see 1, maybe 2 quarterbacks go in the first round. Like, that makes it a little bit more difficult to try and figure out which teams need what, especially when you look at the landscape of the NFL at this point in time with teams that are in need of quarterbacks where the value chart does not suggest that they take one this early in the draft. And I've seen a lot of conversations recently about the Las Vegas Raiders possibly trading the number 1 overall pick, which I would not do. I know you could do a lot of different things in here. You could trade the draft pick, get a lot of other picks in there, but I don't think this is the year. And this is it's kind of a weird situation because I don't want it to sound like a diss towards Fernando Mendoza. And it's not, because I've seen a lot of people talking about trading the first overall pick because Fernando Mendoza is not that guy. But all at the same time, I don't know what you would get in a quarterback class like this with Fernando Mendoza being the only one you could look at as the number one option. If that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't because you've seen teams before, like when the LA Rams, when they first got back to Los Angeles, that first draft, they traded up to number one to get Jared Goff. I believe the Tennessee Titans held the number one overall pick, and they needed a quarterback at that point in time too, but still traded the pick back. So you could look at it in however way you want, but with the Raiders getting an offensive-minded head coach in Clint Kubiak, with them having Genti and Bowers, and with Tom Brady being a minority owner there who's going to be very involved in the draft process, I have a very hard time believing that they will pass on a guy like Fernando Mendoza at this point in time. Obviously, that thing's subject to change, and maybe a team like the Jets, who with Aaron Glenn as the head coach, who's still there as the head coach, coming from Detroit, we talked about Jared Goff before, a guy that Fernando Mendoza has been compared to quite a bit is Jared Goff. So there could be that connection there where the Jets want to take a guy like Fernando Mendoza, trade up to number one to get him, and the Raiders can try to restructure the defensive side of the ball with Max Crosby's future in Vegas looking very shaky at best at this point in time. But Fernando Mendoza has everything you could look for in a franchise quarterback. Like, he's got the size, he's got the mobility, he's got a good arm in there. He's won in college, coming off a Heisman Trophy season, he's got a quick release. There's going to be a lot of question marks, though, around the type of offense that they ran at Indiana. A lot of quick throws. What's he going to look like when he has to go through long-standing reads and stuff like that? How quickly can he work through his progressions and stuff like that, which is something we didn't really need to see a whole lot of at Indiana. A lot of RPOs there, a lot of quick slants, a lot of short routes in there. But when he pushes the ball down the field, most notably down those back shoulder throws, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now you could look at like Dante Moore in that aspect as well. But in regards to this specific draft class, Fernando Mendoza was that guy. And he's got the mentality and the personality that you kind of look at and go, oh, you're going to be good at the next level. Superstar, I don't know. I don't like brandishing players before they've even played a snap in the NFL as superstar or bust like a lot of people out there do. But you see how he, like, the way he talks about football, the way he seems to be a student of the game, and that nerd aspect of him makes it seem like he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL, and what makes it so tightly connected to Tom Brady in that aspect, who's also a student of the game and a nerd in some aspects. Like, Tom Brady didn't come to the league and be instantly cool. That's not how Tom Brady was. I'm not saying he was Fernando Mendoza, but he wasn't Mr. Suave at that point when he first got to the league. No, he wasn't. So I think he could be very much, I'm not trying to put anything on him, say he's going to be Tom Brady or he's going to be frickin' Jamarcus Russell. I'm not going to say anything of the sort. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm taking Fernando Mendoza first overall and kind of jump-starting your era with that division, because that division's tough. Like, it's arguably one of the toughest divisions in football next to the NFC West. Like, you got the Chiefs who are going to be better next year. They're not going to finish 6-11 next year. They're not going to do that. You got the Broncos who are fresh off an AFC Championship appearance. You got the Chargers who are in the playoffs last year. It's a tough division to work around. The thing is, as well, you've got some very talented quarterbacks in that division. So getting Fernando Mendoza in there, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Raiders at first overall. If they want to trade back and get a defender, fine. If they want to restructure the offensive line, fine, but Fernando Mendoza would be the guy that I would pick first overall. Number two, this is where the draft kind of starts, because conventional wisdom would say Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese is going to be the second overall pick in the draft. That's what everybody would want to say. And I keep coming back to this one thing. Like, Arvell Reese might be the best overall player in the draft. He might be the best overall player in the draft. Like, ceiling-wise, athletic trait-wise, he's a guy you look at and go, this dude's going to be special. He's got too many traits not to be special at the next level. And you look at him like Caleb Downs. You could look at Jeremiah Love. There's a lot of players you could look at, but the more people you see will have Arvell Reese atop their draft boards more often than not. The problem is that we don't know what his position is or what his position is going to be at the next level. We've seen a lot of players like this going into the NFL, where you look at like Jalen Walker from last year. You look at Micah Parsons when he came out. You look at Isaiah Simmons. These are guys that you could look at and go, wow, these guys are going to be very talented at the next level. These are guys that are going to be top 10 picks. Obviously, Micah Parsons, there were some like personality issues or personality traits that people weren't necessarily the biggest fans of, which is another reason why he fell to 12. But another reason was, is he an inside linebacker or off-the-ball linebacker, or is he an edge rusher? His ceiling suggests that he could be an edge rusher at the next level. But he also could just be a linebacker. I say just a linebacker, but you're not going to use a premium pick like the second overall pick on a guy to play linebacker. That's not what you're going to do. more often than not. I mean, the Jets could go off and do that because, again, the talent says draft him second overall. But the positional value thing suggests that, hey, you might not take him second overall. He might slide a little bit further than what his talent suggests because we don't necessarily know for sure what his position is. So I think at this point in time, obviously it's going to be subject to change, that the New York Jets, a team who would just need help on multiple fronts, and with Aaron Glenn being a defensive-minded guy, I would expect them to go after another edge rusher, but a more natural edge rusher. And those guys are David Bailey from Texas Tech and Ruben Bain from Miami. And David Bailey's a guy who I saw Dale Jeremiah had number 2 overall in his last mock draft. And the thing is between between Ruben Bain and David Bailey is David Bailey's more of a stand-up edge rusher, a guy that you want over the tackle. Ruben Bain's a hand-in-the-dirt type guy. And if you look at what Aaron Glenn does on the defensive side of the ball, his defensive ends, he likes having more hand in the dirt. But if you look at what Robert Saleh before with the New York Jets, that is more stand-up, over-the-tackle edge rushers. You look at Will McDonald they drafted. You look at Jermaine Johnson, and that aspect. Like, these are guys that are going to get around the edge with speed, and he needs more power guys, or more hand-in-the-dirt power guys, not that stand-up outside linebacker type stuff, or outside edge rusher and two-point stance. He wants a three-point stance, rush. And I think out of those two guys, I think Ruben Bain is the more natural fit for the system that Aaron Glenn will present with the New York Jets, rather than David Bailey. And David Bailey was awesome this past year at Texas Tech. And it's so weird when you're when you're coming up with a mock draft and stuff and coming up with players to go in each spot, and you're like saying how good one person is, but it kind of sounds like you're putting down other people. And it has nothing to do with that. And I would not be shocked at all if people had Ruben Bain ranked 3rd out of these top 3 edge rushers in this draft class. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But I think, again, he just fits what Aaron Glenn will want to do on the defensive side of the ball more than David Bailey. And I think the fact that he's a natural D-end rather than a linebacker and or D-end, I think will present him or give him a little bit better shot of going at this point rather than Arvil Reese, even though Reese has the higher ceiling by most accounts than Bain does. The only question surrounding Ruben Bain is his arm length. That's really the only thing. And I saw a tweet that perfectly exemplifies what Ruben Bain is, because you always hear about T-Rex arms. Like, oh, Ruben Bain's got T-Rex arms. We heard that with Will Campbell 1,000 times throughout the course of the Super Bowl, is that he got T-Rex arms. We heard that pre-draft last year, T-Rex arms. The difference is Ruben Bain is a T-Rex. That's what he is. And if you can add a player like that to the defensive line, a guy who is a relentless pass rusher with great size in there as well, length, yeah, whatever, but he will get after the quarterback, a relentless motor, and I feel like he fits what Aaron Glenn wants to do. So I have him going 2nd overall to the New York Jets. And 3rd to the Arizona Cardinals, I have Francis Mauigoa from Miami. Natural right tackle, can play guard on the inside if he needs to. If it's required of him, he can do it. But you got Kelvin Beachum and Jonah Williams both entering free agency, both at right tackle this past season. There's a massive hole there. In my last mock draft, in the pre-postseason mock draft, I had him taking Ty Simpson. And I think that had a lot to do with Simpson's coming out, Dante Moore's still available. So if Moore goes 2nd, which was very likely to be the case at the time, if he goes 2nd to the Jets, then the Cardinals will look at that and go, we need to get our quarterback now because of the run of quarterbacks. You know, like in fantasy football, you kind of wait to see when you're going to get your quarterback. You get your receivers and wide receivers and skill position players out of the way, and then when someone drafts a quarterback right after you, then you're screwed, because there's going to be about 4 or 5 quarterbacks that go before you get up again. So you need to be quick on the draw, because they're like, oh shit, they're starting the quarterback run, now we got to take one. I think Simpson at a point in time would have been a very likely option to go 3rd overall. And I think that point in time was like, oh, this is a weak class, Cardinals need a quarterback, they're going to get rid of Kyler Murray, taking Simpson here makes sense. I think the Cardinals could wind up with him at some point in time, but at this point, it looks more likely to be a 2nd-round guy, if at all. Because I just have a hard time envisioning 3rd overall now. I know it's only been a month, but still, I have a hard time envisioning that at this point in time, even though I think Ty Simpson, at points in time out throughout the season, was the best quarterback in this draft class. He just happened to fall off due to injuries and all this other stuff, and inconsistent play through the back half of the season, and that's why he slid down a little bit. But Mauigoa, again, 6'6", 315 pounds, absolute mauler. He'll take the fight to opposing pass rushers. And I think with Mike LaFleur coming in as the new head coach, an offensive-minded head coach. I think solidifying that right tackle spot will be big for the Arizona Cardinals moving forward, and they can figure out the quarterback position for this year. You kind of just need a stopgap for this year. I've heard them linked with Malik Willis. I think he's more likely to go down to Miami. I don't know necessarily what they're going to do at the position as a whole, whether they're going to stick with Jacoby Brissett or go with some veteran in there. But you look at next year's draft class in regards to quarterbacks. And I know we did this last year as well, and it can completely fall flat on its face like it did this year, where you go like, oh, next year's class is going to be absolutely loaded. Teams won't take a quarterback in the first round because next year's class is loaded. And then look what happened. We went from having potentially 6 guys go in the first round to now we have maybe 2. And most of those 6 guys that we had in that conversation of first round guys either aren't in the draft at all or are going to be drafted anywhere near the first round of the draft, which is crazy to think about, but that's sometimes what happens. So sometimes you got to be a little bit more proactive. But if you look at next year's class, you look at Arch Manning getting another year at Texas because the back half of the season, he played really, really good. Really good. Then you look at like Brendan Sorsby for Cincinnati, Dante Moore for Cincinnati, Texas Tech, sorry. Then you got Dante Moore coming back. Lenore Sellers another year of development. Could be big for him. Like there's a lot of really talented quarterbacks. Jade Maiava at USC. There's a lot of talented quarterbacks on paper. It's just a matter of if they actually develop this year. But getting those tackle spots solidified with Paris Johnson and Francis Maligoa from Miami, I think will be a very good way to get them back on track with that organization. Number 4, we talked about this, we kind of alluded to this before, but the Tennessee Titans at number 4, I haven't taken David Bailey. So it's kind of a similar situation to that of Ruben Bain, where like Arvell Reese, again, by most accounts, might very well be considered the best overall player in the draft with the highest ceiling in the draft overall, regardless of position. But that's the problem. We don't know what his position is at this point. And I don't think he'll fall like astronomically far in the draft. But I do think at this point in time, like teams like the Jets and the Titans who need more, I don't want to call them specialists in that position, but I guess in a roundabout way, yeah, for these positions of need. The Titans need more help on the defensive side of the ball. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded head coach. Their GM came from Kansas City. And if you look at Kansas City Chiefs past however many drafts, in the first rounds, they have been targeting defensive talent. That's been their main MO. They were like, okay, we got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid on the offensive side of the ball. They can figure it out with whoever we give them. And then the defense, we're just going to load up with first, second, third round talent. Like you look at their Super Bowl run last year. All but 2 of their starters on the defensive side of the ball were drafted by them. Like that's what they do. So with him coming over from Kansas City, I know he was here last year, but him coming over from Kansas City with Robert Saleh there, solidifying and getting another player next to Jeffrey Simmons, not necessarily in the middle of the defense, but on that defensive line or in the pass rushing department, I think will be big. And we brought it up before with Robert Saleh with his time with the Jets. Those stand-up edge rushers. Not the three-point stance guys, the stand-up guys. You look at Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald. These are guys that are stand-up edge rushers. And David Bailey fits that. He had 14.5 sacks this past season for Texas Tech as they were one of the best teams, best defensive teams in all of college football. He proved his worth, proved his weight in gold, I guess you could say, with how much money they gave him this offseason. But 20.1% pressure rate this past season, which led the nation this past year. And I know there's going to be some people out there who say the Titans should look at like a Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, get a weapon for Cam Ward. Because one thing I can't get out of my head is the Week 1 game. I know it was Week 1, but the Week 1 game against the Denver Broncos where they ran a screenplay and every receiver out there is blocking and Cam Ward just basically spiked it into the ground. Like, I know Shamir DK, Alec Iomanner, they're very solid young receiver. I mean, DK made the Pro Bowl as a return specialist, but still made the Pro Bowl. So they got talent. But they need that true number 1 guy because Calvin Ridley ain't that. We know that. So it's now looking to add that other guy in there. And maybe they do wind up doing that, but given the record of the Chiefs with Bergazzi coming in there, coming in there because he was there last year, but looking at what he learned from Brett Veach and with Robert Saleh coming in, I think defensive guy will be the first order of business. I think the stand-up edge rusher of David Bailey fits what Robert Saleh wants to do. So I have him going 4th overall to Tennessee. The Giants at 5th. John Harbaugh's in a head coach. They're going to draft the best player available. That's what they did in Baltimore. The Baltimore Ravens were a team that rarely drafted just solely off of need. You look at a lot of teams in the NFL that they draft off need. And Ozzie Newsome was very big in that. And Eric DeCosta did the same thing when he became the GM. They drafted best player available. Whatever player will make your team the best, that's who they'll go after. And I think that's what he's going to do here. I know Joe Shane is still there as the general manager, and as a former Buffalo Bill, I still don't understand why he's there. I don't. But with Dable being kicked out, I don't know how Shane stayed there, but I could say the same thing about my own organization. So I don't know. But John Harbaugh coming in, and with John Harbaugh being a defensive-minded head coach, was a defensive back coach, played defensive back in college, I think this is a defensive back pick. I know there's going to be talks about a right tackle. Spencer Fano is available here. I know there's going to be talk about Carnell Tate. Again, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon. There's going to be options there. And you could look at an Arvell Reese here as well. But I think Caleb Downs would be the number one guy on John Harbaugh's draft board. And if you saw when he talked with Mike Francesca the other day, how much he was glowing when talking about Caleb Downs and looking at the past records that he's had with these safeties. In Baltimore, he had Ed Reed, he had Kyle Hamilton. Then you look at Philadelphia when he was there as defensive back coach, had Brian Dawkins there. Like, he loves having those safeties there. And Caleb Downs is an absolute difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. He's more than just a safety. I know there's going to be a couple people that knock him because he doesn't have like a wow trait or anything like that, but you just watch the tape and you're like, this dude's the best player in the draft. And I think I think John Harbaugh would look at Caleb Downs and think that. And regardless if he's a safety, linebacker, whatever, he will make plays for the New York Giants on the defensive side of the ball or whatever team he's on the defensive side of the ball. He just makes plays. That's all he does. And people talk about like he could be the highest safety since Eric Berry, comparing him to Eric Berry. In a sense, I've seen people comparing him to Eric Weddle. And if he can reach those levels, you've got yourself a damn good safety on your team. And I think Harbaugh would love having a guy like that on the defensive side of the ball. I know it's the safety, I know positional value and all that stuff, but Caleb Downs is just a football player. I think he makes a lot of sense given Harbaugh's history, and that I think he's, again, with Arvell Reese, one of the best players in the draft, one of the top 2 players in the draft. And then you look at number 6, this one kind of picks itself. I know, again, we talk about these teams needing wide receivers. It could happen here, but the Cleveland Browns have no offensive line. They don't. I'm not even exaggerating. They don't have any offensive linemen. None of them. Look at any of them. You look at Joe Bitonio. You look at Jack Conklin, Ethan Posse, Cam Robinson, Wyatt Teller. All these guys are free agents this offseason. Those are 5 starters on the offensive line, are all free agents. All of them. They need help on the offensive line. Spencer Fano is the next best tackle after Maui Goa. And I could see a reality where you see Fano go earlier because Maui Goa's got potential to kick inside if need be. Fano's, though, I think the problem there'll be with him is this size. And I say size because it's so funny when you talk about like how there's concerns about his size, and he's 6'6", 300 pounds. Like, oh my God, we need to worry about his size. But comparatively to Maui Goa is listed at 315. Like, that's a 15-pound difference right there. And I know that might not seem like a whole lot, because if you're driving 15 miles an hour on the road, you're like, man, this is slow. This is damn slow. Why am I going so slow? But if you add 15 pounds to a 300-pound squat or something, that adds up pretty quickly. That adds up pretty damn quickly. So I think there's going to be some question marks around that, but he's really light on his feet. I think, again, would be just a natural guy to slot in at right tackle. And with Todd Monken coming in as head coach, coming from Baltimore, coming from Georgia, you want to establish the trenches. That's what Georgia did so well when they were winning national championships. That's what Baltimore's always looked to do, or not always, but have looked to do, establish the trenches. I think Spencer Fano or Maui Goa, regardless of which one is here, would be the pick ultimately. But again, Carnell Tate is a guy that I think would be a very intriguing option here, but the Browns got 2 first-round picks. So it's kind of how you want to balance it, because they're going to take an off to tackle and a receiver. That's what it seems like. It's just a matter of, do you think you could get better value from which position at which spot? Do you think it'd be wiser to draft Carnell Tate here and take someone like, I don't know, Blake Miller from Clemson at 24? Or do you think it'd be smart to take Spencer Fano and then take whichever receiver is best available at 24? Or trade up from 24? Regardless, that's what you're going to have to try and balance out here. Maybe they double down and take a tackle here and take a guard later. I mean, we've seen the Atlanta Falcons do that. They did that with McGarry and Lindstrom back in 2019. So you could see that reality being a thing, especially, again, they have no linemen. They have none. None on the active roster right now. They have 5 starters are gone in free agency. I guess they're not gone yet, but they're in free agency right now. So they're as good as gone at this point in time. But Spencer Fano to Cleveland at 6, I think just makes a lot of sense. Outland Trophy winner, makes a lot of sense there. Number 7, this is where Arvell Reese stops. This is where the fall stops. Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator. Micah Parsons got drafted. He's the guy he gets compared to is Micah Parsons. There's really not much more explaining to do. And regardless of where you want to line up Arvell Reese on this Commanders team, they could use help at linebacker and edge rusher. Like you look at Bobby Wagner's 100 years old. Von Miller's not much younger or older. I don't know that. I can't remember their exact where you flip their ages at. But Dan Quinn wants to improve the defensive side of the ball. They want to get younger. They want to get faster on the defensive side of the ball. I could see a reality where like Mansour Delane from LSU gets taken here. I think Caleb Downs would make a lot of sense. David Bailey, I think, would make a lot of sense. But I think value-wise, R.L. Reese cannot fall past Dan Quinn. He can't. That doesn't compute in my brain. He cannot fall past Dan Quinn. He can't. And I know there's going to be, again, people talking about getting weapons because the Commanders don't have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. The running back, I know Bill Krosky-Merritt was like, oh, this is awesome. We love seeing Bill in here. But he kind of teetered off towards the end of the season. Chris Rodriguez is there as well. You look at the receivers. You got Terry McLaurin, who was injured every other week pretty much this past season. Luke McCaffrey's there. And Debo, I don't know what you want to do with Debo. Because I remember there was that, when they made that trade last year, there were some people like, oh my God, they got Debo. It's like, this isn't 2020. No one cares that you got Debo Samuel anymore. That's not that big of a deal. But that's the Commanders for you. They did that. They made a living off doing that in the early 2000s. But I think right now, they need to get younger on the defensive side of the ball, and Dan Quinn's going to want to do that. And if you look at this division that they're in, the NFC East, with Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Jackson Dart for the New York Giants, you got some good quarterback talent in this division with some talented offensive players in there as well. You got a lot of good talent on the offensive side of the ball, and if you're the Commanders, you got to strengthen your defensive side of the ball, and Dan Quinn's going to want to do that, and R.L. Reese is here. You take him. But again, there will be conversations about Jeremiah Love, Carnell Tate. I think there will be conversations there, but I'm going to have R.L. Reese here. Number 9, the Saints. Speaking of Carnell Tate, I have him going here. And I think that you could go a couple different routes here. It's either Jeremiah Love or Carnell Tate, in my opinion. Unless Carnell Tate's off the board, then you're looking at Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson here. But if Tate's off the board, I think they're taking Love. And I think the Chiefs at that point in time, you can look at a receiver, but I think they're wanting either Jeremiah Love or Reuben Bain. But we'll get to the Chiefs here in a little bit. The Saints need to add more weapons around Tyler Shough. They traded away Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave's got a blood clot in his leg, so we don't really know what his long-term future is. And he gets hurt quite a bit. I know he stayed relatively healthy last year, but there is that concussion concern that's always going to be looming over everybody's heads. And Alvin Kamara is also there, but he's getting older. He's been linked with a move away this offseason, talking about reuniting with Sean Payton in Denver. I have seen a couple things about that. But Carnell Tate, and I picked this one because I struggle between Jeremiah Love, and Carnell Tate. I did struggle with this one. And I think the Saints need both positions. I think they need more help at the running back room. I think they need more help at the wide receiver department. But the reason I ended up going with Carnell Tate is the whole Tyler Shough, Kay Adams interview where she was asking about Carnell Tate, and Tyler Shough was talking about how awesome it'd be for Carnell Tate to play there. And I know he's a quarterback. He's going to say any receiver that comes there, it's going to be awesome to play with. She could have sat there and said like Keon Coleman, and he would have sat there and go, Keon would be an awesome addition to our team. He'd be an awesome addition to our team. That's what would go on. That's what the conversation would be. It would be anybody. But the fact it was Carnell Tate, that's what's sitting in my brain right now. So I'm going to go Carnell Tate here. 6'3", 195, great deep route artist, or great deep threat, 17.5 yards per catch this past season at Ohio State. I know there's going to be some concerns that Jeremiah Smith is widely regarded as the best receiver in college football. Even last year, as a freshman, widely considered to be the best receiver in college football. So the amount of attention that gets taken off of you because Jeremiah Smith is there, that's going to be interesting to see how teams evaluate that going into this process as well. So a team like the Giants, this is where I think Carnell Tate would fit really well with the Giants because of Malik Neighbors being there. Carnell Tate could thrive in this, and that sounds so mean and sounds so degrading to the talent that Carnell Tate is, because Carnell Tate is undoubtedly a top 3 receiver in this draft class. So dumbing it down to he's only good because Jeremiah Smith's there sucks to say, but there are going to be people out there that look at him and go, what can you be as a true number 1 option? With Chris Olave there, that's going to be some pressure taken off of him. But the question marks, again, regarding Chris Olave's long-term health, there's going to be some openings there. So we'll have to wait and see. But Carnell Tate, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Saints at 8. The Chiefs at 9, Jeremiah Love. The Jeremiah Love going to the Kansas City Chiefs feels like cheating. They had no run game load last year. And I talked about before with the Titans about the Chiefs, how they've basically gone about the draft of targeting young defensive talent early. Or just throughout the draft process and kind of go Mahomes, Kelsey, Reed, you guys figure it out on the offensive side of the ball. Defense is going to be stout. Spags is going to have this defense stout with a lot of young talent on there, and you're just going to figure out the offense. But the fact of the matter is, they have struggled on the opposite side of the ball. The defense has been good, but they have struggled the past 2 years on the opposite side of the ball. And I know Mahomes tore his ACL, but they were struggling well before he tore his ACL this season. They were struggling way before that. And they have no run game, which is a big reason why they basically, they didn't technically fire Matt Nagy, but they kind of just kicked him out and said, thank you, peace, thanks for your time, but get out of here. They didn't technically fire him, but they brought back Eric Bieniemy. And Matt Nagy, for what he was or what he isn't, he's not good at developing a rush attack for the Chiefs offense or really any offense that he's been a part of, whether it be in Chicago or wherever. They haven't been able to establish a running attack. And Isaiah Pacheco being injured hasn't been ideal. Kareem Hunt gets brought back every other week. So it's like you're not going to go into next season with Mahomes coming off a torn ACL. Lord knows when he comes back, but comes back with a torn ACL, from a torn ACL, with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt at running back. You're not going to do that. And there's going to be some question mark. They need a receiver too. You can't count on any of those receivers, really. Like Xavier Worthy, you got him in the first round. You can't really count on him fully as a main guy in this offense. Rashee Rice, Lord knows what he's going to do off the field. And Travis Kelce's not getting any younger, so you got to figure stuff out in that department as well. But Jeremiah Love is the best player in a position of need for the Kansas City Chiefs here. And again, much like you talked about with Caleb Downs, he's so much more than just a standard running back. 6 foot, 214 pounds, has long speed for days. You look at his 99-yard touchdown he had against Indiana in the playoff last year, hurdling over defenders, is a really effective receiver out of the backfield, which I think is very key for this Kansas City Chiefs offense, needing a guy that can make plays out of the backfield. I mean, that's why they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire back in 2020, was a guy who can make plays out of the backfield as well. That one just didn't work out. But I think we can all sit here and agree that Jeremiah Love is vastly superior to that of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. As good as he was at LSU, Jeremiah Love is one of the best running backs in recent Notre Dame history. Maybe you could say Notre Dame history of all, just in general. But 1,300 plus yards rushing, 18 touchdowns, 280 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns there. Just a dangerous player in the open field. And again, I don't like saying that he could go to Kansas City, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So I got him going here at 9. Number 10, Cincinnati Bengals. I am taking Keldrick Falk from Auburn. And this one's weird. Keldrick Falk is going to be one of the most talked about players going into the draft process. Like, the combine's next week. He's going to be one of the guys you look at and go, okay, how is he going to test? Because if you look at him, just build-wise, 6'6", 285 pounds. Absolute freak unit of an absolute specimen coming off the edge. And he was a borderline top 10 pick prior to the season starting. You look at what preseason mock drafts had in that. They were like, this guy's got all the athletic tools to be a top guy in this year's draft class. He just didn't have the production this year. And that's a big fear for a lot of people out there. You look at Shamar Stewart last year from Texas A&M, not having the production, but having that insane tools that you look at and go, wow, this guy could be really special. You look at Travon Walker down in Jacksonville. I think Travon Walker is kind of underrated at this point in time. But Travon Walker, you look down at him, he didn't really have that production at Georgia, but he wasn't really asked to. That was more of a situational type thing in regards to what he's asked to do at Georgia, what he does for the team rather than just being a natural edge rusher to get after the quarterback. Setting the edge is very important. I think Keldrick Falk is better at setting the edge than being a natural pass rusher, but he does have the positional versatility. He can play both inside and outside, which is what the Cincinnati Bengals want. The Cincinnati Bengals are a team that, if you look at their past couple of edge rushing drafts, you look at Myles Murphy, you look at Shamar Stewart, we just brought up before, I think Keldrick Falk fits in that mold of what they look for in those prospects. And I know they've got Trey Hendrickson, but Trey Hendrickson's probably going to be moved on this offseason, not because they want to, but because he wants to be moved on. So if they move on from him, there's going to be a big hole at edge rush, and maybe you don't feel like Keldrick Falk can fit that hole or fill that hole. Not a lot of players can. But he's got the talent and the ceiling to suggest he can get there minus the production that he did not have this past season at Auburn. I know there's going to be some Bengals fans that are frustrated by this, and I could see him going later, but I just have a hard time, given his size, that he goes much later than like 15 in this draft. I've seen some people have him back in the back half of the 20s. I just have a hard time seeing him fall that far. I think in a perfect world, the Bengals would love to have Caleb Downs. I think Mansour Delane or Jamon McCoy from Tennessee and LSU respectively could be really realistic options here. But given Trey Hendrickson's questionable future and the fact that they look for traits in these edge rushers, I think Keldrick Faulk could be an ideal pick for the Bengals and what they look for, even though some people out there might see this as a little bit of an overdraft at this point in time. And then number 11, speaking of Mansour Delane, Miami Dolphins taking Delane here. And then we might as well stick with it. Jermon McCoy from Tennessee, I have him going 12. So the two guys we just mentioned, I have him going back-to-back picks, 11 and 12 to Miami and Dallas. Both teams are in desperate need of corners. Miami Dolphins, Rasul Douglas, Jack Jones, Kader Koo, they're all entering free agency this offseason. They have not been good. That secondary has not been good. And with Jeff Hafley coming from the Green Bay Packers, with being the defensive coordinator, I think Mansour Delane with his long speed could be a very likely target for the Packers, or the Dolphins. I could also see, though, we talk about looking at traits, both head coach and GM came from Green Bay. Both of them came from Green Bay. John Eric Sullivan, Jeff Hafley, coming from Green Bay. What did they look for? They looked for traits. They looked at not production. They looked at ceiling. Keldrick Faulk could fit that, especially after cutting Bradley Chubb. They're also talking with trading away Minka Fitzpatrick as well. Their Dolphins are pretty much just selling. They're selling out. And I think they're going to look towards next year's draft, but you need to get a corner. You need to get a corner. Rasul Douglas was your best corner this past year. And he's over 30. He's on the wrong side of 30. You can't. I know he's a free agent as well, but you can't have that as your not top option at corner. He was the only defensive back last year to register more than one interception. You need a corner. Mansour Delane. There's going to be some conversation about the ceilings between Mansour Delane and Jermon McCoy. There's going to be some question marks there, but I think with Mansour Delane playing last season, McCoy coming off a torn ACL and not playing at all last year, I think we'll get Delane the top spot out of the top two guys, but excellent ball skills, quick and fluid hips. He picked off 8 passes and broke up another 27 throughout his 4-year career, and I think the upside is there as well. I know there's going to be some people that say it's more with McCoy because I think, again, we didn't see him play at all last year, but Mansour Delane at 11 for the Dolphins, and then Cowboys at 12. They just need defenders. Sonny Styles has been a guy that I thought about here. Keldrick Faulk's another guy that I've thought about here. Again, the Cowboys kind of look for those younger prospects, and I'll talk about one that we have here at 20 as well, but they just need help on defense. The offense is not the problem. Cowboys ranked second in total offense last year. They ranked second in passing offense last year. Dak Prescott, George Pickens, who I think they're looking to franchise tag, and CeeDee Lamb were just awesome. They just were. They were very good last year. And the defense, they sucked. They were bad. Shocking you trade away one of the best edge rushers in football and get really nothing back. Wow, shocked that your defense is not as good. It's just not. It's crazy how that all works out. I don't know. Don't ask me. Don't ask me. I'm just the messenger. But I do like that they brought in Quinnen Williams from the New York Jets. I do think that was a very nice move. But they need help in the secondary, edge rushing department, linebacker, wherever. They just need help everywhere. And I think McCoy, after cutting Trayvon Diggs, you have Deron Bland there. Siobhan Revell is a solid player who was a rookie out of East Carolina last year, 3rd-round draft pick there. But I think McCoy's length and athleticism, we'll see him be one of the first corners taken. And again, I do think there's going to be some conversation about him and Delane for the top corner in this draft class. But I think because of the ACL, I'm going to have Delane go first. So I have him going to 11 to Miami and Jermon McCoy going 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we have back-to-back positions again at 13 and 14. The Los Angeles Rams at 13, I have them taking Mekhi Lemon from USC, wide receiver. And at 14, Baltimore, I have them taking Jordan Tyson, wide receiver from Arizona State. These two picks, I flipped 1,000 times on. I could not have flipped more times on. But we'll start with the Rams. They're another team, like we brought up with the Chiefs, who tend to target defensive players earlier in the draft. You look at the success that they've had these past couple years in the draft. Because remember, they didn't have first-round draft picks. It was all F them picks type thing. Like, you had no picks to work with in the first round. Now they got all these first-round picks. Everybody's talking about, they need to get opposite weapons. And they just keep drafting defenders. And they've done very, very good at drafting defenders, whether it be first-round or second-round or third-round guys. Like, they've done a very, very good job at doing that. And the biggest need on their roster is corner. That's the biggest need. They have a lot of people leaving in free agency. The only corners they're going to have on the roster left is Emmanuel Forbes. I think it's the only guy they're going to have left on the roster. So they need to get a corner. But with Mansour Delane and Jermon McCoy going 11 and 12 to Dallas and Miami respectively, they could look somewhere else. Right tackle is going to be an option. Havenstein just announced his retirement. Long tenured Ram at right tackle. But I do like Warren McClendon. I do think he played pretty solidly there last season, so I think they might roll with him. Not to get anything or like spoil anything at pick 29, but the Rams here, Mekhi Lemon, value pick. at this point. Like your number one position's gone at corner. I don't think they would look at any of the other tackles at this point if you're the Rams. I don't think you're looking at a guard here. Like you're looking at just another thing to strengthen the offense. And Matt Stafford's coming back for another year. He announced that. He's coming off an MVP. So just kind of sweeten the deal a little bit. You already have Puka Nacua, who's one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL. You got Devontae Adams, who's over 30, so it also could be a nice little contingency plan in place there. But getting Mekhi Lemon with those two already there would be so special. And I think, again, I brought this up before. That game against Iowa that Mekhi Lemon had and Jade Mayava, respectively, that was one of the best games I've seen from a wide receiver against Iowa ever. And it was probably my favorite game to watch from a wide receiver this past season. I know Jordan Tyson had some crazy catches in the limited time that he had this year, but you look at some of the plays that Mekhi Lemon was making in that game against Iowa was just crazy. Like he had one drop in 110 targets this past season, 79 catches. He also forced 21 missed tackles. They like that dog. They want that dog out there. So I think Mekhi Lemon going 13 to the Rams makes a ton of sense for them. Keeping Matt Stafford happy again and just adding more weapons to an already really good offense. And then Jordan Tyson for the Ravens. We talked about this before with John Harbaugh. They just draft best player available. It's not necessarily the biggest need on the roster. Obviously, they're not just going to go out and draft like, oh, well, this quarterback's available. That's the best player available. So we're going to draft him even though we have Lamar Jackson. There's obviously exceptions to every rule. I'm not sitting here going like that's all they do. But that's one thing they like to do is look at a need and go, okay, who's the best player available from these needs? That's how they kind of tend to target. And you could look at Iane, from Penn State, the guard from Penn State, as an option here because you look at Tyler Linderbaum could be leaving this offseason. Daniel Faalele could be leaving this offseason as well, both entering free agency. So there's a big need at guard or interior offensive lineman here. But I think more of a scheme fit would be Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, getting him potentially in the second round. I think that would make more sense for what the Ravens do on offense. They do need more help on the edge rushing department. You could look at somebody like Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. You could look at TJ Parker from Clemson. You look at Akeem Mesidor from Miami. Like there's options here that you could take for edge rush. You could also need help on the interior defensive line as well. Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. There's a lot of options you could roll with here. But again, I think the best player available, given the needs that they have, is Jordan Tyson. And I think the reason he's going to fall this far, or if he does fall this far, is because of the injuries. Jordan Tyson has not been healthy, really, consistently healthy throughout his time at Arizona State. Like, you look at the hamstring issues, you had the ACL issues, you had a broken collarbone. Like, he's had a lot of, and I don't really care about the collarbone thing. If it's a broken bone, I don't really hold that against you. It's more the ligament and, like, muscle injuries. Those are the ones that are more reoccurring. If you break your collarbone once, I find it very unlikely that you're going to break it again. Maybe that's stupidity on my part. I don't know. But Jordan Tyson, if he does fall here, I think the Ravens don't even think about it. Like, you got Zay Flowers there, but that's about it. And Rashad Bateman's future's in question. He's entering free agency, so you could let him go. If you let him go, who are your other options? There's going to be people linking him to Tyreek Hill because the Baltimore Ravens pretty much, if you're an old receiver, there's a pretty solid chance you could be playing in Baltimore next season. Like, Tyreek Hill is going to be the main guy everybody looks to. Like, oh, the old receiver, man, Tyreek Hill, he was good. He was good 2 years ago. Maybe you should look at him, Baltimore, even though he's coming off one of the worst knee injuries I've seen in a while. But we don't really talk about his knee injury because I think people just don't like Tyreek Hill. So I don't think they really care. But Jordan Tyson, he's built like what you want in a number one wide receiver. He's what you look for. 6'2", 200 pounds, makes all the circus catches. Very big catch radius. Like, you used to look at some of the catches that he was making this past year. I can't remember which game it was off the top of my head. I need to look this up because there was one game in particular. I could be getting it wrong. I want to say it was against Texas State. Where he just went ballistic. I want to say it was that game. Is that the game where Sam Levitt made some crazy pass and Jordan Tyson jumped over? So I think it was that game. I think it was the Texas State game following the Mississippi State game. There were some plays that he made in that game that I don't think a lot of receivers in college football were able to make. And if it wasn't for the injuries and the scare of the injuries, I think he could be the first wide receiver taken off the board. I really wouldn't be bothered in whatever order you had each of these top three receivers because I think they're just very, very good. And if he's available for Baltimore at 14, take him. Because again, out of all the needs they have, so if you look at the Ravens' needs, you would go in no particular order, But you go wide receiver, offensive lineman, guard, center, whatever, D tackle, and edge rusher. Those would be, and again, no particular order, but those would be your needs right there. Who is the best player available at those needs? Jordan Tyson. So that's where I would say Jordan Tyson goes there. Does it fit what Jesse Minter would probably do? I don't know. But given that history of the Ravens, I think that's what it will end up being. You look at the needs, the 4 needs that they have, and then you rank the best players from those needs. I think Tyson comes out on top out of all of them. So that's why I have him going number 14 to the Baltimore Ravens, following the Rams, taking Mekhi Lemon at 13. And then next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sonny Styles, linebacker from Ohio State. Again, he's one of those guys where talent-wise, you could widely consider him to be one of the best overall players in the draft. You could see him easily being taken inside the top 10. You look at a team like the Washington Commanders. As a team we talked about before, with Bobby Wagner getting up there in age and Dan Quinn being the defensive head coach there, it would make a lot of sense for them to move for someone like Sonny Styles, should someone like Arvell Reese obviously not be available. But then you look at like the Dallas Cowboys, I brought them up before, with how many problems they have on the defensive side of the ball, needing a linebacker like Sonny Styles to make multiple plays for him would make a lot of sense. But at this point in time, at this current stage of the NFL, especially after what we watched in the Super Bowl, like we brought up that before, cornerbacks are very, very important. And you look at the Dallas Cowboys, who have needs, again, all over. If they're looking at their positions of need, corner, you'd probably take the corner first over the insanely gifted linebacker. But again, that's just positional value at this point. And do you need to agree with that? No, but that's the fact at this point. There's a lot of positional value stuff involved with the NFL draft. And Sonny Styles, though, again, super talented, former safety, 6'4", massive individual at linebacker, can make multiple plays all over the field, super quick at the linebacker position. Excellent play speed, play recognition, all that stuff. More than willing tackler, speed for days. Again, he's a guy that I think if they're looking for Levante David, who's 36 years old and a free agent, I mean, you look at what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've been trying to replace Levante David, or been linked with moves to replace Levante David for however many years now, and haven't been able to with a viable prospect in the draft. If Sonny Styles is available, which Lord knows if that's going to be the case, he would be the slam dunk home run pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at 15. Again, edge rusher could be an option. I've seen some people talk about Kenyon Sadiq, the Oregon Ducks tight end, could be an option here as well, but we have him going a little bit later. If he's available, I think Sonny Styles is the pick here. There's going to be some talks at corner too. If one of Jamon McCoy or Mansour Delane are available here, maybe we have that conversation. But I think Sonny Styles, given his overall play, and given the fact that Levante David is, again, 36 years old and a free agent, I think it would make an absolute slam dunk pick for the Buccaneers. He's the most natural fit in my brain at this spot than any other pick in the draft up to this point in regards to just natural fit and need. So he comes in at number 15. Number 16, the Jets. So they have back 2 first-round picks. This is the first team we've talked about with their second first-round pick. First one was their own. Second one is via the Indianapolis Colts thanks to Ahmad Gardner trade, which at the time seemed dumb. Because Ahmad Gardner, maybe I'm a biased Bills fan and stuff like that, but when they traded a first-round draft pick for Ahmad Gardner, has he been in the quote-unquote elite talks for the past couple years now? I know he was great coming out the gate, but these past couple years, I don't feel like he's been up to that same standard with Pat Surtain and the other guys like that. Or like Christian Gonzalez or Derek Stingley. I don't think he's been up there with those type of guys these past couple years. So to trade a first-round draft pick for him was more of, in my case, a name thing than a production thing across the past couple seasons now. But the Colts did that, dropped like a freaking rock. Obviously, Daniel Jones getting hurt did not help anything. So they just fell off the face of the earth. So the Jets now have the 16th overall pick in the draft. And at the time, I believe the Colts were the best team in the NFL, or one of the best teams in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor was looking to break every single rushing record out there and just completely flatline back half of the season. So when you're trading first-round picks, you're thinking like, oh, we're going to be good, so that first-round pick's not going to be very valuable to us at the end of the day. But for a corner, I just don't. I know I talked about with the Buccaneers with like the value of the cornerback position and stuff like that. I know I just talked about that, but still, at this point in time. So now the Jets have the 16th overall pick. I think there's going to be a lot of Jets fans that want a wide receiver. Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon would make a lot of sense. Denzel Boston is the next receiver a lot of people will be looking at, the receiver from Washington. A lot of people will be looking at him. But I think at 16, that might be a little bit too rich At this point in time, it obviously can change, but at this point in time, I think 16 might be a little too rich for Denzel Boston. And again, I understand the receiver thing. Like, Garrett Wilson was the leading receiver last year. He had 395 yards. He didn't catch a single pass after week 6. And he led the team in receiving with less than 400 receiving yards. I know they got Adonai Mitchell in the trade for Sauce Gardner, but they need more help on the outside. They don't have a quarterback, though. That's another issue. So Justin Fields, Brady Cook, Tyrod Taylor, those guys are not your answer to quarterback. So in some sort of reality, Ty Simpson could be in play here. He could be in play. I've talked about the idea of them potentially trading for Fernando Mendoza, given the Jared Goff comparisons and Aaron Glenn being the head coach. I think that could be an option. But bringing up Aaron Glenn, defensive-minded head coach, wanting to improve the defensive side of the ball is a key thing for the New York Jets moving forward. And you draft Ruben Bain with the second overall pick, might as well double down on the defensive line and draft Peter Woods from Clemson. Get a 3 technique to get in there to replace Quinnen Williams. Peter Woods is kind of a guy at this point in time that he's kind of dividing opinions about where he should go. And I think you kind of look at the top 5-ish interior defensive tackle prospects in this draft class, and you kind of go whatever order you want. And I don't really think there's a big talent discrepancy between the top guys. Like, let's just look at the top 5-ish guys at this point in time. So you're looking at the likes of, You're looking at the likes of Peter Woods, as we talked about before, Caleb Banks from Florida, Caden McDonald from Ohio State, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, and Christian Miller from Georgia. Those are your top 5-ish guys in there. Those top 4, I think we can say probably Christian Miller's probably the 5th in this ranking. But if you look at those top 4 guys, Woods, Banks, McDonald, and Hunter, you could go a lot of different directions there. You could go a lot of different directions. And Peter Woods is one of those guys where you look at Clemson last year as a whole and go, the production wasn't where we thought it would be. Like, prior to the season starting, a lot of people would have said Peter Woods is a sure thing, surefire top 10 pick in the draft. And you could say the same thing for a couple other Clemson players, but we'll talk about them here shortly. But Peter Woods is, again, do you look at the production that he had last year or the overall skill set that he possesses at the position? Now, he's not as big as Caleb Banks, but no one really is in this draft class. Caleb Banks is a monster human being. And I saw Field Yates had Caleb Banks going 16th overall the New York Jets in his last mock draft. I saw that. And Caleb Banks, again, monster individual. 6'6", damn near 330 pounds. Peter Woods, by comparison, is 6'3", 315. But the difference is Caleb Banks will be 23 years old here in a couple weeks. So I think that will definitely sway some people in that regard. And I think there's a question about his production in regards to that as well, and the consistency that he has at the position. I think Peter Woods' ceiling is higher, and the way people viewed him prior to the season starting, I don't think that should have changed all too drastically at this point in time. But I think Peter Woods or Caleb Banks' performance in the Senior Bowl will help with that. I think Lee Hunter's another guy with Senior Bowl performances being a big factor in there as well. But I feel like with all these guys, I'm trying to talk about one of them at a time, and I keep going to talk about this guy, but I'm really talking about this guy. But Peter Woods, for his size, is really quick, and he has very violent hands. And he uses them to his advantage when making plays in the run game. He moves side to side very well, and he really shows really, really good effort when making chase down tackles after the play, if they get past him at all, which I think is a very big thing with Clemson defensive linemen. I know there's some people like, I'm kind of nervous about Clemson defensive linemen. Like, forever Dexter Lawrence, you have Cleveland Farrells. Like, you don't know what you're going to get with the Clemson defensive linemen. I understand there's going to be some people that are scared with that, and he might not be the most lengthy prospect, but I think with the quick and violent hands that he possesses, his lateral movement I think is very good. I think for the Jets, with the defense that they're going to be running with Aaron Glenn, I think would fit in perfectly next to Ruben Bain on the defensive line. So I got the Jets completely restructuring the defensive line by bringing in Ruben Bain and Peter Woods. And I think that'd be 2 very, very good gets for the Jets at 2-16. And I do think, I didn't bring this up before, but Jermaine Johnson's future is very much in question to be linked with trades during even the season. So I wonder if he's going to be even on the roster come next season. So that'll be another feeling out process as well. And speaking of feeling, this kind of sounds familiar to feeling. I got Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle from Georgia, going to the Detroit Lions here at 17. This is a team that needs help along the edges, both on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. Aiden Hutchinson needs another edge rushing partner. They do. Al-Quadin Muhammad, he's their second leading sack getter this past season. He's entering free agency. He'll be turning 31 in March. So you look at that and go, okay, you could potentially bring him back, but you're going to need to bring another guy in anyways. And you're looking at Akeem Mesidor. You're looking at TJ Parker. You got a couple options here for the Detroit Lions. They just need to find somebody to get after the pass rusher with Aiden Hutchinson. And though I think that's an option, I think Monroe Freeling will just keep rising up draft board. And Taylor Decker's future is very much in question with him contemplating retirement. So I think with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell there, I feel like they're going to want to strengthen that offensive line because the offense is Dan Quinn. That's his bread and butter, is the offensive side. Like everybody talked about, like, man, the Lions are still running all these trick plays this year, and Ben Johnson left. It's like, yeah, because Dan Campbell was the one, or not the one, but one of the ones constructing those trick plays. And I think he's going to want to re-strengthen that offensive side of the ball, which just was not to the same level that we had seen him previously. And we knew there were going to be some sort of a drop-off this past season with the Lions because of the fact that they had new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, still ranked top 5 in passing offense, or top 5 in passing offense and total offense. And they were top 4 in sack production this past season. But I think they're going to want to get more consistency on the offensive line. You look at Penei Sewell being there, one of the best right tackles in all football, and Taylor Decker being 31 years old, to be 32 before next season starts, contemplating retirement. I think someone like Monroe Freeling would be a good option here. I think a guard could be an option here as well, or an interior offensive lineman. You look at Ioane from Penn State, could be an option here. But Freeling, 6'7", 315 pounds, 35-inch arms. Let me talk about the length from the tackle position, which, again, has been a big talking point with Will Campbell. Now you got this guy with 35-inch arms coming in. He's only started 18 games across his college career. So there's going to be that question mark there as well. But I think if Taylor Decker does come back, you don't need to throw Freeling into the fire right away. You don't need to. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could sit him behind Taylor Decker for a year before he ultimately retires. But if you do need to throw him in there, I think he possesses the traits that you look for in a starting left tackle in the NFL. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's really quick out of his stance, and has great bend with the size that he has, which I think is very important because you don't want to just be this big lug that can't move. You want to be able to flow freely in the process as well. He's allowed just 2 sacks this past season at Georgia. He's battled some injuries across this past season, but I think his ceiling is very high, and I think if the Lions want to look for a potential replacement for Taylor Decker, I think Freeling at 17 would make a lot of sense. Maybe that's a little bit of an overdraft, but I do think he'll be in and around that conversation of the next tackle available after Fano from Utah. Number 18, the Minnesota Vikings. This one's second. It's secondary based. It's secondary based. They need corners. They need safeties. Defensive tackle could be an option here as well. Caleb Banks. We talked about Peter Woods before. McDonald, Lee Hunter. Like, there's options there, but they need help in the secondary. Byron Murphy's really their only go-to corner there. I don't really know if there's a lot of faith there. But with Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator, he loves using his safeties. And Harrison Smith not getting any younger, contemplating retirement as well. Pretty much sounds like he has one foot out the door already. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo makes a lot of sense for what Brian Flores wants to do on the defensive side of the ball. 6'3", 6'2", 202 pounds. He's a predator. He's an absolute predator. Heat-seeking missile. He'll calmly move up to you when he's making a tackle and just absolutely light you up. He'll absolutely light you up. He's very aggressive, very lengthy, long athlete, very smooth as well, which I think works well with what, again, Brian Flores wants to do. He absolutely explodes on ball carriers. And just the speed and length in the pass game as well, I think would be very beneficial to what the Vikings want to do in that secondary spot. And I know there's going to be some concerns about the Vikings drafting secondary players because of Kwesi's his draft record, I guess, with drafting those guys. I mean, you had a chance to draft Kyle Hamilton. You traded back with the Lions to take Jameson Williams. You took Lewis Seen. And then you traded back with the Packers in the second row, took Christian Watson. You took a corner from Clemson who I can't remember his name at this point in time. Like, the draft record of drafting secondary pieces with Kwesi was not the greatest. But now they got a new GM. They haven't named one yet, but with Kevin O'Connell pretty much running the draft, I do think there's going to be some questions about the level of where he played. Like, I talk about like the positionless players, the gadget players, or whatever. With the guys coming from Toledo, there are going to be some questions raised about that. So maybe you look at the guy from Oregon, Theinman. You see him come in here as a safety prospect, coming from the Big Ten. Maybe you look at that. He could realistically be an option there. Like, if you're looking at safeties, would you rather have a guy from Oregon or Toledo? Just based off that. And there could be some people that go, oh, I want the Oregon guy. And maybe they end up trading back and taking him. That could be an option here as well. And I don't know how many Toledo guys have ever been taken in the first round, but I have an idea that this would be the highest a Toledo player has ever gone. But I think he'd be very good value here for the Vikings here at 18. I've seen people have him as high as 13s. Like, this guy could go anywhere. I think he's a damn talented player. I think he fits what Brian Flores wants to do there. Number 19, the Panthers. Edge rusher is going to be a big talking point here. Edge rusher is going to be massive. TJ Parker from Clemson is going to be a very big talking point. Keldrick Falk, if he's available. Keem Mesidor. All those guys. They're going to be realistic options here. But I think with the Panthers at this point in time, you want to see what you have fully with Bryce Young. Bryce Young played well. I know the stats weren't really like the most eye-popping against the Rams. And I know his numbers weren't like insane this past season. But you can see that there's something there where you're like, he's kind of fooling, like, man, is he going to do it? Is he going to be good this year? Oh, maybe we do have our franchise quarterback. We'll have to see. Oh my God, there he goes. He makes this play. Like, you want reassurance on that. And Tedoroy McMillan was awesome this past year. One Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, 1,000 yards receiving. He was awesome. 8th overall pick this past year. Why not add more weapons around that? You have Jalen Coker there. Xavier Legette is not it. You have no production from the tight end position at all. I mean, you look at combined, Jatavian Sanders and Tommy Tremble, 439 yards combined this past season from the tight end position. Those are top two receivers on the tight end spot. You have a 1,000-yard receiver in Tedoroy McMillan, which is awesome. You have good running backs, but you need more production in the pass game. Give him more weapons, and I think Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon makes a ton of sense for Carolina here at 19. And again, edge rusher is going to be big. They did, though, draft 2 edge rushers in the second and third rounds last year. I'm not saying that completely absolves them from drafting one here, but I do think that could give you some leeway to work with the rest of the draft because I don't think you're going to find a player like Kenyon Sadiq at the tight end spot at any other point in this draft. I think you could get some good edge rushers. I think there's going to be some question marks around some of the top edge rushers in this class. I'll talk about that after we get done with the mock draft. But I think with that, just skill base, I think Kenyon Sadiq would be an excellent pick here. He's not like the biggest prototypical size tight end out there. He's 6'3", 245 pounds, but he is fierce. He is competitive. And when you talk about his size, he's a very competitive blocker, which I think is very important to have if you're not necessarily as big as Rob Gronkowski or George Kittle. And with that size, he is an absolute matchup nightmare. And you can line him up anywhere. You can line him up the traditional tight end spot. You can line him up the slot. He will eat defenders up, whoever's guarding him. He's way too damn athletic to be guarded by a linebacker. He is an absolute matchup nightmare. And you see how many deep throws that Dante Moore hit to Kenyon Sadiq and how many acrobatic catches he made throughout this past season. I think it just worked perfectly with what Bryce Young does. With what Tedoroy McMillan already provides, I think adding Kenyon Sadiq would be just another stepping stool for this Panthers offense to build on what they did this past year. Dave Canales, being an offensive-minded head coach as well, I think would be an excellent spot for the Panthers to take Kenyon Sadiq. Again, he could go anywhere in this first round. He really could go anywhere. I wouldn't be ultimately shocked if he wound up going top 10. I wouldn't. I also wouldn't be shocked if he fell all the way to 30. I really have no clue where Kenyon Sadiq will go, but I think a team like the Panthers at 19, I think this would be like the perfect spot for him, especially for Carolina looking to build around Bryce Young again. Number 20, the Dallas Cowboys, second team with a second first-round pick. This one comes courtesy of the Green Bay Packers with the aforementioned Micah Parsons trade. And speaking of Micah Parsons, they need an edge rusher. They need to get an edge rusher. Donovan Ezeraku, I liked him this past season from Boston College. I thought he was a very good prospect for them. But TJ Parker from Clemson, I think, would be the Cowboys' pick here. And again, what we talked about before with Peter Woods, Clemson was not good by the standard that was expected from them. Like, and everybody, including, not everybody, but a lot of people, including myself, were like, oh, this Clemson team could go on to go to a national championship. Maybe not win it, but they can challenge for a national championship. And losing to LSU week 1, I was like, okay, fine. LSU's a good football team. That's fine. That's fine. But then losing to Georgia Tech, losing to Syracuse, being down 16-3 against Troy, going into the fourth quarter, that's not a national championship challenging team. And they got better as the season went on, but they were not a good football team by the standard that was set by everybody else out there. And you look at players like Peter Woods, like TJ Parker. These guys were consensus top 10 picks prior to the season starting. TJ Parker was coming off a season where he had 11 sacks. This past season he had 5. And again, do you want to look at the overall production or what this player can be? Because he's going to turn 21. So he's still young. And I talked about this before with the Dallas Cowboys. They want the younger prospects that they feel like they can mold into very good players. Like if you were asking me who's the better pass rusher right now between Parker and Akeem Mesidor, I would say Akeem Mesidor. And I'd be perfectly fine with saying that. But the problem is Akeem Mesidor is one of the older prospects in this draft. And that's not going to bode well for him in this draft, or at least I would assume. Maybe they look past it completely and go like, hey, this guy's way too good to pass on here. But he'll be 25 in April. He'll be 25 in April. Just, again, to put things in perspective, TJ Parker is 21 right. Okay, he's 21 right now. He'll turn 22 in September. So by the time next season rolls around, TJ Parker will be 3 years younger than Akeem Mesidor. 3.5 pretty much younger than Akeem Mesidor. And I think the Cowboys will look at that and go, I think we'll take TJ Parker. And maybe I'm overreaching here. And there was some, like, you look back to before the Senior Bowl, and people are talking about TJ Parker not even being a first-round draft pick. But I think of that Senior Bowl, and this helps, a lot of prospects, this helps. And it makes sense. I mean, it's the Senior Bowl. But if you perform well after having a season that wasn't up to your standard, then you could get back to a conversation where you were prior to the season starting. And I think that's what's going to happen with TJ Parker. And I think, again, he's got decent size, not like elite size or anything, but 6'3", 265 pounds. He's got versatility to line up both inside and outside, but again, 6'3", 265, probably not going to line up a ton inside at the next level. But when he does, he's able to beat those inside blockers for speed. And it doesn't have like the most, and I say for speed, but the burst initially is not like crazy. It's not crazy burst like, oh my God, he's shot out of a freaking cannon. But he has the natural speed, the natural power to more than make up for that and overpower people. And that speed on the inside gets in, the power on the outside gets him around. I think the Cowboys would love a player like that. I think they would absolutely love having a player like that on the defensive line. Again, you got a good pick with Ezraku last year. You brought in Quentin Williams from the Jets. You got Kenny Clark. Now you get a guy like TJ Parker to come around the edge. Again, at this point in time, I think most people would say Akeem Mesidor is better than TJ Parker. But I think stealing-wise and what the Cowboys tend to look for, I think the Cowboys would rather pick Parker than Mesidor at this point in time. But it would not shock me if Mesidor ended up going here to Dallas too. Number 21, Pittsburgh, Ty Simpson. There's going to be a lot of people talking about wide receiver here, and it makes sense. Apart from DK Metcalf, they don't really have a lot of options on the outside. They don't really have anybody there. Denzel Boston, would make a lot of sense here for the Steelers. But if you look at, they just hired Mike McCarthy as a head coach, which is, it surprised me in a sense, but I wasn't surprised at the same time because if you look at what the Steelers do in their history, the Steelers have had 3 coaches the past 60 years. And it's been Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. All 3 of those guys, when they were hired, were under the age of 40 and were defensive head coaches. Mike McCarthy comes into the job as not only not a defensive head coach, but he also comes to the job at 62 years old. So you take what I'm very sure Mike Tomlin was hired at 36. Like you take that, you only got 10 years difference if you just doubled Mike Tomlin's age. Like that's where it gets like, it's a very Steelers move in regards to you don't have a high ceiling with Mike McCarthy, but you can make the playoffs. That's what it is. Mike McCarthy is a coach that can get you to the playoffs, but that's about it. And that's where the Steelers have been for the better part of 15 years. Like that's all the Steelers have been. You can go into each and every season and go, hey, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will finish with a 9-8 record. I think the Steelers will finish with a 10-7 record. And in that same breath, you will go, I also think they'll get beat by 30 points in the first round of the playoffs. Every time, without fail. Mike Tomlin, to his credit, got the most out of this roster, but the Steelers as a whole are just content with making the playoffs, and that's it. They don't want to suffer. They don't want to be down in the basement and for a year or two and then get back to the top like the Patriots did. They don't want to do that. They want to still be on the mind of everybody and like, oh, we're a consistent playoff team. That's what they want to be. And Mike McCarthy will provide that for them. And Aaron Rodgers He's looking like he might come back. The connection with Mike McCarthy, the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy is weird to me because I thought it was worse than what it apparently is. I thought they didn't like each other, but apparently Aaron Rodgers will stay because Mike McCarthy. I don't know. I've been confused by that past couple weeks. But though receiver's a big problem here, Ty Simpson, I think, fits what Mike McCarthy will want. And if you look at the Steelers' post for Mike McCarthy, when they announced that they hired him, it was pretty much going down the line of all the quarterbacks that he's developed throughout his time. And they weirdly included Joe Montana in Kansas City, which I don't know why they included him in there, because Joe Montana was I don't know if you guys know this, was not really a young pup by the time he got to Kansas City. He was actually kind of old, and he already won 4 Super Bowls and stuff like that. But that's regardless. That's beside the point. But they went through this whole thing about him developing quarterbacks, and he was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco when they drafted Alex Smith. He was the head coach in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers was starting there. He has a track record of working with quarterbacks and being that offensive-minded head coach that you look for in that. And I think Simpson would do best if he was under a situation like McCarthy, who's been around the block a little bit, and you have a quarterback in place like Aaron Rodgers, who he can learn from. I'm not sitting there and saying Aaron Rodgers will hold his hand. Aaron Rodgers will not hold his hand throughout this whole process. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers will be a complete and total asshole to Ty Simpson, but he's not going to hold his hand and go, oh, yeah, you did this good. You did. No, he's just going to be business as usual. I think Ty Simpson could take a lot away from that. And if you look at what Ty Simpson is and what he was at Alabama, who was someone I really liked. I really enjoyed watching Ty Simpson play. And I said again, there were points in times throughout the course of the season, I would say majority of the season, I thought Ty Simpson was the best quarterback in the draft. Majority of the season, I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft class. And then that Eastern Illinois game, that's where it slowly started to turn. The Oklahoma game, you can kind of talk about that one too. The South Carolina game was also one you could kind of go, But those back half games, there were some questions about his back injury and stuff like that, where he started to dip a little bit. And I still think he has enough credit in the bank to warrant being a first-round draft pick. The thing is, though, he only has 15 starts to his name. There's not a very high success rate at the next level for a quarterback who has been rushed in with so little starts under his belt. But what makes Ty Simpson so interesting with that, he played so much more, like he had so much more experience than just 15 starts. His pre-snap recognition was fantastic. The way he threw receivers open, the amount of NFL throws he made, I can make a very good argument that Ty Simpson made more NFL-level throws than Fernando Mendoza did this past season. The problem is, Ty Simpson's, again, the injury and inconsistent play the back half of the year, and the deep ball he struggled with pretty consistently that back half of the year. I think when everything's lined up, Ty Simpson throws one of the best footballs in the country. He's not afraid to push the ball down the middle of the field, which I think is a very important thing to do at the next level. He's very fearless in that regard. I think it's a very good trait to have at the next level. Will it hurt you sometimes? Yeah, but overall, I love when a quarterback is not afraid to push the ball and drive the ball down the middle of the field. And not see a receiver with a defender on him and avoid him just to throw to a more open guy. No, make the throw. If you can make that, if you can confidently throw that ball and make it, look at the Missouri game as a prime example of some of the throws he was making in that game. Like, there are some crazy-ass throws. And it's not just that game, but there's the one that he rolls out to the left and hits, I think it was Isaiah Horton down the left sideline. Like, throws like that. The Missouri game, I would recommend people go to watch that one. Because it was a great game from Simpson. But that lack of starts does cause concern, and rightfully so. And there's going to be a lot of question marks around that, and he's probably going to get drilled with that at the combine with the whole interview process. But again, with Rodgers there, hopefully, or a veteran presence in general, I don't want Simpson to get drafted by the Jets. I don't want Ty Simpson to get drafted by the Jets because I don't trust them. I do not trust them at all. And I know you could go like, well, the Steelers, their last quarterback they drafted in the first round was Kenny Pickett, and that didn't really work out. Yeah, but I would have rather had Kenny Pickett sit behind Aaron Rodgers than rotate with, I think Mason Rudolph was the only other quarterback on the roster. I know Mason Rudolph's there now, but you have Aaron Rodgers there. And you have Mike McCarthy there. And for how great of a coach Mike Tomlin is and was, he's not an offensive guy. That's where Mike McCarthy being there, I think, could help. And for the long term, no. But for the here and now, they will be a 10-win team, a 9-win team, and they'll make the playoffs, get blasted the first round. But you can have that plan at quarterback And I think Ty Simpson would do well sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for a year or two and then taking over. I think he'd be good. I think he would be good. And I like this spot more than the other teams that you could possibly look at for him. Like you look at the Jets, you look at the Cardinals, you look at, I don't really know other teams you can really look at there, but I like the idea that he could sit. I like the idea of the Rams too. I think that'd be a very good spot there as well. 13th or 29th to the Rams, I think it make a lot of sense. If he doesn't go to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21, then 29 to the Rams, I think makes a shit ton of sense. The Browns, same thing. I don't want him to go to the Browns. I don't think they would draft one anyways, but just as another team to give an example for. I think the Rams and Steelers would be the two teams I'd want him to go for him, with the Steelers picking 21st. I think that'd be a natural fit there. Especially with the Steelers, again, talking about Mike McCarthy's development of the quarterback position. And how much he helped with Joe Montana. Like, the way we look at Joe Montana now is all because of Mike McCarthy and his work in Kansas City. Joe Montana was nothing without that. So I think that's very important to note. So we're going to go with him at 21. 22, Vega Ioane from Penn State, guard. Yeah, it kind of picks itself. Chargers off the line sucked. It was brutal. It didn't help that Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater both were dealt season-ending injuries. Doesn't help at all. You have two top 15 tackles, both getting hurt. That doesn't help. Your interior off the line, a mixture of Bradley Bozeman and Mekhi Becton. Zion Johnson was fine, but the other two, good God. Good God. I think I saw something on Sunday Night Football where it was like Bradley Bozeman ranked 35th out of 35 center or 36 center. There's only 32 starting centers in the league. How are you ranked 35th? Same with Mekhi Becton. How are you ranked that low? How is that possible? You're that bad to be worse than like 2 or 3 backup players? That makes absolutely no sense. They need help in the offensive line. Defensive line, they could do stuff there too. They could do stuff there. Edge rusher could also be a factor there. But you need to get the offensive line. Justin Herbert was playing hurt 99% of the year. Maybe not 99, maybe like 65% of the year. I got a little too excited there. Probably 65% of the year. But if you want to get back to the playoffs and not get absolutely embarrassed, and Herbert didn't play great regardless of the offensive line being bad or not. Because the offensive line had been bad all year. It's not like it was just, now the offensive line's bad in the playoffs. No, it had been bad all year. But that playoff game was the worst he had played all year. Like, it just completely fell on itself. And I think if he's available, Ioane is the best interior lineman in the draft by a pretty good margin. You could look at like Basantis from Texas A&M. Again, we brought up Pregnon as well from Oregon. Those are two guys you could also look at. But if Ioane is available, again, I think the Ravens are the most realistic team to take him if they do out of the teams in front of him. But again, you could look at the Lions, you could look at the Jets as other options. The Panthers as well could be an option there. But if Ioane is available, the Chargers take him. They just do. And it's pretty simple. I don't even really need to explain it. I think it kind of just picks itself. But physicality, raw power, all the stuff Harbaugh loves, go there, 22, get Omari and Hampton kicked off for a second year, and move. Hopefully Herbert doesn't get hurt next year, and hopefully you can actually win a playoff game next year. Number 23, the Eagles. Blake Miller from Clemson. Natural right tackle. Lane Johnson's contemplating retirement, as he has pretty much the past 3 years or so. Lane Dickerson is also contemplating retirement. I think there's going to be some Eagles fans out there that would love Kenyon Sadiq because Dallas Goedert's a free agent. And Kenyon Sadiq, and it has seemed like for a little bit now, and maybe I'm overanalyzing it here, but for the past however many years, it has felt like the Eagles have been trying to get a tight end in the draft. Or they've been linked with a tight end to the draft. Whether it be a first-round guy or a later-round guy, they've tried to utilize higher picks with a tight end. And they haven't been able to do it. So I do think there's going to be some of that in there with the Eagles in regards to a tight end position, but you could look at some of the guys that are later. There's some decent tight ends you could get later. I do think the Eagles will take one. They also need a corner. Cornerback, tight end, and offensive tackle are your 3 biggest needs. And if you look at Howie Roseman's draft history, Howie Roseman has done stuff where you look at a guy who's retiring or might be retiring or could be a free agent or whatever. He always has a contingency plan in place. I shouldn't say always, but more often than not, he has a contingency plan in place. Like, we'll just focus on the offensive side of the ball. Because he's done it on the defensive side of the ball. You look at some of the defensive tackles that they've had. Like, you look at Fletcher Cox with Jordan Davis. I believe that was the one of them there. You look at that option. Like, that's just one example. But then you look at the offensive side of the ball. You had Jason Kelce there. You draft Landon Dickerson. But then Jason Kelce still wants to play, so you slide Landon Dickerson over the guard. You draft Cam Jurgens from Nebraska. So you have another contingency plan there. You had Jason Peters. You draft Andre Dillard. Like, you get these guys to come in and potentially replace the guys that you have already there. Obviously, Jordan Mailata took the job from Andre Dillard, and Lord knows what he's doing nowadays. But even you can have Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. You can even have that in there too. Like, that's what he does. That's what he wants to do. He wants to have these contingency plans in there, so now they're not scrambling when they lose a key player like that. They always want to have something in place. Always want to have somebody there, whether to play right away or to learn under said player before taking over. And Lane Johnson, he's contemplating retirement. He's not officially retired or retiring. So if they're able to keep him there for one more year, you get Blake Miller in there from Clemson, who's a natural right tackle. I think that'd be fantastic. I think Blake Miller could play right away too. And there's the thing that's cool about Blake Miller as well, is that people have called him Lane Johnson Light. That's what they've called it, Lane Johnson Light. He's a natural right tackle, ideal size, length, straight. We talked about the Monroe Freeling as well. 6'6", 315 pounds, uses his length well in pass production, keeps his defenders at distance, and he also has nice quickness, and he likes to control possessing nice quickness, control players around the edge as well. And he's not afraid to move downfield either in the run game. Great at moving downfield. Always looks to finish his blocks, which I think is a key thing for this Philadelphia Eagles offense for what they really want to do. And the passing offense was a mess last year. I think everybody can see that. Everybody knows that it was a mess. Jalen Hurts was not at his best this last year, even though he had better numbers than what he had the season before. But remember, he had that concussion in the back half of the season. So we saw Tanner McKee come in and play for last year, or 2 years ago, I guess, when they won the Super Bowl. I always feel, when you say last season, do you think I'm talking about like the season that just happened or the season 2 seasons ago? Like I never know how to word that. But regardless, these contingency plans are always there for the Eagles. They always have one. So regardless of Lane Johnson, if he retires or not, Blake Miller here, I think would make a lot of sense. I had another option here as well, but I'll talk about that after the draft. 24, the Cleveland Browns. We talked about this already. This is from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got this pick from the Jaguars in the Travis Hunter trade last year. And we talked about this before with the Browns, where they're needing a tackle and they're needing a receiver. So it depends on the value, what you want to have there. Do you want him to take the wide receiver first, get a Cardinal Tate and take a tackle here? Or do you want to take Spencer Fano and take the receiver here? With the receiver class being as deep as it is, I think it's a very good receiver class. Like, you could have a good amount of receivers go in the first round. I'm not saying, like, you could have 8 guys go in the first round, realistically, and no one really bat an eye. At least maybe they bat an eye because 8 is a ridiculous number. 8 out of 32 picks are wide receivers. That's a little crazy. But regardless, you look at the value of the position, you would go tackle first, and then, or the value of the position, the amount of players that you can get for the value of the spot you're picking them at. Because obviously you would say, you would rather, I guess depending on who you ask, like offensive tackle or wide receiver, it kind of just depends on who you ask, but it all starts in the front. Like that's what most people, I would say, would look at and agree with, is that it all starts in the front. So you got to get the offensive line figured out, especially when you have no starters coming back. So you get the tackle first, and then you get a guy like Denzel Boston, who I've talked about before, could get picked as high as 16. Again, that's a little high for me, but that's a guy you could look at, and we talk about Lane Johnson light. People have called him Mike Evans light. That's what they've called him as well. The Browns need more weapons on the outside. Like, no receiver had more than 600 yards this past year. Only one had more than 600 yards. That was Jerry Jeudy at 602. He had 602 yards receiving last year. That was their leading receiver. Harold Fannin led the team in receiving, but I'm talking about wide receivers in receiving yards. Harold Fannin was awesome from Bowling Green. He was awesome. But for the wide receiver position, Jerry Jeudy went from a 1,000-yard receiver to a 602-yard receiver. You had Cedric Tillman there as well, but you need more weapons on the outside. Denzel Boston, 6'4", 202 pounds. Biggest catch radius in the draft. You look at some of the plays that he made while at Washington this past season, the amount of diving catches that he made, the toe tap catches along the sidelines. It's just very impressive. He's a very physical wide receiver, a very physical runner with the ball in his hands. He's not really going to try and juke you out of your shoes or anything, but he'll try to run you over. He'll always fight for extra yards, and he's going to outmuscle defenders in the high point ball. He's going to outmuscle defenders. There's not a single defender who's going to outmuscle him for a ball. He's a great athlete in there as well. I'm not going to say he's an absolute burner or anything, but he's a very good athlete from the receiver position. So I think if he's available here at 24 for the Browns, I think the Steelers at 21 could take him. But if he's available for the Browns here at 24, I think it's a really easy pick for them. So you get end the first round with Spencer Fano and Denzel Boston. I think it's a very good step for the Browns and their offensive side of the ball to get that moving for this upcoming season. With Pro Bowl quarterback Stuart Sanders there, you get your right tackle and another wide receiver figured out. Like, man, another Pro Bowl might be in his future. Number 25, the Chicago Bears. Soon to be the Hammond Bears. Moving to Indiana. I know it's in the Chicagoland area. I know it's in the metropolitan Chicagoland area, but it's Indiana. Hey, in Iowa, hey, we still got to try. Don't give up hope yet, Iowa. We can still get the Chicago Bears here. Put their asses in Davenport and still call them the Chicago Bears. It's like, we're like the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, where Anaheim's not Los Angeles, but we're the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which that makes sense. You're the Chicago Bears of Davenport. How about that? Does that make sense? You're the Chicago Bears of Davenport. Yeah, there we go. And it all works out that way. I did see this. The Bears have more moves to Indiana than 4,000-yard passers, which is kind of sad. And I like the Bears. I'm not even trying to dig at the Bears or anything, but I like them. But it is sad at that same breath. But it's only 30 minutes away. Like, I've seen all the reactions. I understand, like, keep the Bears in Illinois and stuff like that. But it's not like you're moving hours away. You're in the Chicagoland area. Like, you're still in that area. And I'm pretty sure it's like Arlington Heights is the place that they've been linked with the most. I'm pretty sure Hammond, where they're going to build this new stadium apparently, is closer to Soldier Field than Arlington Heights is, the current spot of Soldier Field. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a Bears fan. I would love to have seen the Bears stay in Chicago. I wish they didn't just butcher the remodeling of Soldier Field. Like, you know how bad a remodel has to be to get a national landmark title taken away from you? You know how bad that has to be? Like, that should be punishable that's war crimes right there. You took a national landmark like Soldier Field and dropped a spaceship on top of it. They were like, that sucks so much ass. You're not even getting that anymore. You know what? You're moving your ass to Indiana in the process as well. Double whammy. But I do think before the Bears do move to Indiana, I do think Caleb Williams will have a 4,000-yard passing season before then. This is the worst that we'll see with Caleb. This is the worst Caleb Williams will be. Is right now. He'll only get better from here. At least that's what the hope is. He'll only get better from here. And with the Bears making it to the divisional round this year, losing to overtime to the Rams, now your goal is to maintain. And if you look at what the Bears need on this team, like they targeted the offense last year. You look at Colston Love in the first round, you get Luther Bird in the second. Like you target the offense early last year. Now it's time to strengthen up the defense. The offense is seemingly figuring itself out. DJ Moore's future's in question, but apart from that, everything else kind of, left tackle could be an option here, but everything else kind of figuring itself out on the offensive side of the ball with Ben Johnson there. Now you need the defense. And I think there's going to be a lot of talk for safety. Theinman, that we talked about before with Oregon, I think could be an option here. Because Kevin Warren, former Big Ten commissioner, wants these Big Ten guys with the Bears. They've won. You look at last year, Colston Loveland, 2 years ago, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, USC Washington, 2 Big Ten schools. Now they want those Big Ten guys there. And you look at Theinman, Oregon, would make a lot of sense in the safety position. You look at Brisker, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, all potentially leaving in free agency this offseason. So there's going to be a hole at safety. So Theinman could be an option. McNeil Warren could also be an option here as well. But if you look at Grady Jarrett, look at the defensive line. You look at Grady Jarrett, he'll be turning 33 in April. Javon Dexter is entering free agency next offseason. So in my brain, the Bears should look to target the defensive line, whether at edge rusher or at defensive tackle. And I think you could look at an edge rusher to partner Montez Sweat. But I feel like Caden McDonald, who is 20 years old at this point in time, he's turning 21 in March, I think would make a lot of sense for the Bears there at 25. Again, fits the Big Ten model. You don't need to rush him in either because of Grady Jarrett being there, because of Javon Dexter. You don't need to rush him in. But you can ease him into the lineup rather than just throwing him out there right there. And the Bears right now, at this past season, because the thing with McDonald, he's not like your pass rushing defensive tackle. He's not somebody that you're going to throw out there and say, hey, get after the quarterback like Chris Jones or Aaron Donald or something like that. But he's going to block holes in the run game. And the Bears need that. The Bears ranked in the bottom 4 in rush defense this past year, which is the worst in franchise history since 2013. And the Bears have had some bad teams since 2013. And that was the worst rush defense they've had since 2013. He possesses great size and strength. He's ultra violent out of the blocks, and he's able to Sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, and my brain's moving faster than my mouth is, so I kind of have to catch myself here. But he's able to toss opposing offensive linemen to the side with ease, using that strength. And with how violent he comes out of the blocks, it sometimes throws them off their balance as well. So I think if the Bears want to improve that rush defense and get that Big Ten guy that they tend to look for, I think that McDonald would be the guy at pick 25. But again, Thyman from Oregon, I think would be a realistic shot here. You look at some of the edge rushers that are available here as well. Those could be options here as well. I think the guy that you look at that most fits what the Bears do, not the Big Ten mold, but Zion Young from Missouri, I think would make a lot of sense for the Bears if they go in that direction. But I think McDonald just ties in a lot of holes, and he's got the age profile that you tend to look for, and you don't need to rush him into it. And if you do, I think he's good enough to go in there and play right away and do good anyways. 6'3", 326 pounds. Big dude. Not even 21 years old yet. Take him at 25 if he's available. But again, those top 4 or 5 D tackles, I don't think there's a consensus ranking out of those 4. I don't think there's a consensus. You can find a ranking that has all of them all over the place. But I think right now, the top 2 guys, in my mind, are Peter Woods and Caden McDonald. Number 26, the Buffalo Bills. Joe Brady's the head coach. The way the Bills' offense works, and if you listen to what Brandon Beane said in the press conference, they talked about when Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator here, they wanted to push the ball down the field. But the NFL started changing more to a run-happy league. Or really, the running back was kind of like re-emerging as an important figure in the offense, where for a time, the running back seemed like it was getting phased out of the NFL. Not phased out completely, but like it wasn't like you had to look at these running backs long-term. Like the Bills, when Brian Daboll was there, they couldn't run the ball to save their lives. It pissed me off so much. Like, I like Devin Singletary, but he used to piss me off so much. Zach Moss was there as well. Like, that was the Bills' running back duo, was Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. For a time period, it was Devin Singletary and Frank Gore. Like, the Bills could not. TJ Yeldon was there for a hot second. Chris Ivory was there. They could not run the football. And then now, the NFL is going back again to not more run-happy teams, but more, I guess the best way you could say is more efficient plays. And the 2-eye safety has been a very big factor in that in regards to teams don't know how to scheme against that anymore, but are struggling to scheme against that. So you're seeing more running offenses. You look at the Buffalo Bills, who are one of the best passing offenses in the league. Now they're the top rushing offense in the league. And you see when they do pass the ball, it's a lot of short and efficient passes with the ball getting the receivers quickly and having them make up yards after the catch. You look at Khalil Shakir. Look at what he did last year. Damn near 50% of his passes that he caught last year were either at or behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of his yards were made after the catch. They didn't really push the ball down the field that much. Now, they didn't necessarily have a guy that you look to and say that's the guy that's pushing the ball down the field, which is why I was so adamant for them to trade for Rashid Shaheed, and they didn't do it. You look at the other receivers they have, like the guys they brought in. Brandon Cooks is getting older. Josh Palmer, he brought him from Los Angeles. He didn't really do a whole lot this past year and got hurt. Curtis Samuel, who had his career year with Joe Brady when he was in Carolina, couldn't ever sniff the field in Buffalo. Keon Coleman, we know all about that situation. Like the Buffalo Bills wide receiver core was bad. Bottom 5 wide receiver core in the league. It's not great. And I love Khalil Shakir, and I wish they utilized him more in the deep game, because when Josh Allen won MVP, which was crazy to think about 2 years ago, Khalil Shakir was pushing the ball down the field. They were pushing Shakir down the field. Now he's an extension of the run game. But again, Joe Brady and Brandon Beane have both brought this up about how they want to structure the offensive line, make that a key, and then get receivers and running backs where they can eat up yards after the catch. And I think if you're looking at, and physical wide receivers as well, if you're looking at what the Bills need, the Bills' number 1 needs wide receiver. But there's also going to be talks about defensive tackle. Deion Walker was awesome this past year. His first team all-rookie. Ed Oliver's been battling injuries ever since he signed his contract extension. Edge rushers were not consistent at all this past year. Michael Hoyt looked to be really, really good, and then he popped his Achilles the second game he was back. They need depth in the secondary, especially at the safety position. Cole Bishop was awesome, but you need another safety next to him because he conveniently got a lot better when Taylor Rapp wasn't playing next to him and Jordan Poyer was next to him. So you need to upgrade that spot too. But overall depth there. Linebacker, C.J. Allen from Georgia, I think would make a lot of sense here too. But if you're looking at the Bills' number one need, it's wide receiver. And out of all the receivers that are available, I ultimately came to the conclusion that Omar Cooper from Indiana is the most natural fit for what the Bills are looking for in wide receivers at this point in time. Obviously, that's subject to change, but Omar Cooper feels like a guy the Bills would target at this point. He's 6 foot, about 185, 190 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he's a very stocky wide receiver. But the thing that I love about Omar Cooper and what I think the Bills will love about him is that he fights for everything. And I'm not just talking after the catch. He had a play. I did this with Jordan Tyson earlier. I'm trying to remember the game. He had a game earlier this year where he caught a ball and broke like 5 tackles on the way to the end zone. I cannot remember I want to say Wisconsin, but I'm not confident in saying that. But there was one game he had where he just broke 100 tackles. Crazy enough. I know, Wisconsin or whoever they played had 100 defenders on the field. And scored a touchdown. But not only that, which is something he's very good at doing, he's a very willing and physical blocker as well. And we talked about how important the run game is to Joe Brady's offense and Brandon Beane's vision for the team. Having a receiver like that, who is able to break tackles, fight for extra yards with the ball in his hand, while also being a willing blocker, I think is very important to what the Bills want to do. 27 missed tackles this past season. He averaged 22.55 yards per route this past season, which is very good. But they also utilized him in screen passes and quick routes as well. But they were also not afraid to push the ball down the field with him either. He only dropped just 4.2% of his 4.2 of catchable balls this past season, which is really good. And if you're looking at the Bills, they want guys who are reliable in the pass catching department and the run block department, who are physical, both pre, post, and not even catching the ball. And they want reliable playmakers. I think Omar Cooper is all of those things. And he made the catch of the season against Penn State. Like, let's not forget that. The catch of the season that kept Indiana's undefeated season alive. The catch of the season. Best play of the season. Like, I think everything the Bills want and everything they've talked about this offseason in regards to wide receivers and just what the offense is, Omar Cooper, I think, fits that to a T. Is this overdrafting? Maybe to some. I don't think this is out of the question for him to be a first-round draft pick. If you watched Indiana play and watched Omar Cooper, there is no reason why he should not be in consideration of a first-round draft pick. He might not be one of the sexier names you look at from one of the bigger universities, but they won a national championship with him being one of the main cogs and one of the most reliable cogs in their offense, whose quarterback just happened to win the Heisman Trophy. Everything the Bills want to do at wide receiver, I think he fits. So I have him going number 26 to the Bills. And number 27, the 49ers. And this is a guy I think the Bills will get linked to a lot. I think there's 3 guys the Bills will get linked to in the first round. The 3 main guys, I guess you could say. Because there's obviously, 4. I don't, you know what? The 4th one I'm not going to count. I don't know if he'd be a first round guy. But we'll include him here. But the 4 guys that I would say the Bills are going to be linked to the most. Just based on everything I've seen this offseason, what the Bills ran their offense through last season. Omar Cooper. Then you got Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. You look at Zachariah Branch from Georgia. And then the guy I have here going 27, KC Concepcion from Texas A&M. I think those are the 4 guys the Bills will be looked at the most. And KC Concepcion, comparatively to Omar Cooper, is a more souped up receiver. He is the separation king. And if you've listened to me complain and bitch and moan about the Bills throughout the course of the season, separation was a big thing that the Bills just could not do last season. The Bills had nobody who could stretch the defense, nobody who could separate from receivers, or from defenders, sorry. And Concepcion can do that in loads. The reason, though, that I have Omar Cooper going to the Bills instead of KC Concepcion is because of the drops. Concepcion has a little bit of a questionable history with his hands, I guess you could say. Like, about 10% of his targets this past year were drops. Comparatively to Omar Cooper's 4%. That's a massive difference. Massive difference. And I don't think the Bills, given what I've talked about, is what they're going to be looking for. And I think the blocking of Omar Cooper, I think, will be a very big factor there as well. Concepcion is not as big as Cooper. Not saying Cooper's this monster, but Concepcion, 5'11", listed at 190, which I think is kind of generous. But he is an absolute burner. And it doesn't matter if you run a bubble screen to him, or quick screen to him, or a vert, there's nobody that's going to touch him. He's going to blow the doors off of everybody. And it's just, hey, go. And we'll get you the ball. And Marcel Reed would get him the ball. Like, he is a very quick receiver, and there's nobody can keep up with him. Screen, slants, those are his bread and butter. And that's what the Bills run a lot of, so it would make a lot of sense. But I think that's what also Kyle Shanahan would want. And if you look at what the 49ers have at wide receiver, it's not really anything. Brandon Ayuk's time there is done. So I would imagine he's going to Washington, just to guess, just because he played with Jane Daniels in Arizona State. His time's done. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall battled injuries all season, and Juwan Jennings is a free agent. They need receivers. I know there's going to be talks about off the line and stuff like that. Trent Williams is 38 years old. You need help at guard. I don't know if they'll get a right tackle. Colt McKivitz signed a 3-year extension prior to last season starting, so I don't know if they'd look at right tackle, though I could see them looking that way potentially. But Spencer Buford and Dominic Pooney, they're both free agents, and both struggled this past season. So you could look at an interior guy here, but if you're looking at what the 49ers need the most, apart from that, you could possibly look at an edge rusher, but I think they're going to bring in Joey Bosa. I think they're going to bring him in. I don't think he's coming back to Buffalo this year. But you look at what the 49ers could use. I think KC Concepcion would be perfect for what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. If he gets the drops figured out, which that's a scary thing to try and figure out at the next level, quote, air quotes, figure out the next level, then he'll be a crazy receiver. I think he fit what they want to do. So there's going to be a conversation between Omar Cooper and Concepcion, but that's how I feel like Concepcion fits what 49ers want to do more, and I think Omar Cooper fits what the Bills want to do more. But I think they're two great wide receivers. Number 28, the Texans, Caleb Lomu from Utah. Again, we got two Utah tackles going in the first round. Lomu was the left tackle this past season. And the Houston Texans, they are an elite defense. We all know this. So there could be a reality where they try to re-strengthen the defense and take someone in like a defensive tackle like Caleb Banks or Lee Hunter. Or they take one of the defensive tackles here. I could see a reality where that happens. Because you already have a strength. Strengthening a strength is never a bad thing. But the thing is as well, that Texans offensive line is not good. They tried to completely scrap it and like try to restart from scratch. It didn't help anything. And CJ Stroud is battling for his life back there. Whether he's seeing ghosts or whatever, he's just struggling immensely. His rookie season looks like a fluke at this point. That's mean. I don't want to say complete fluke, but it's not looking great at this point. If you look at what the Texans have in the offensive line at this point in time, like Ariante Ursary, he played well. Rookie, started at left tackle. He played well there this past season. So you got him there. But you look at the right side. You've got, I've completely lost my spot. You've got Trent Brown, who's a free agent, Ed Ingram, who you got this offseason. So you got two guys that are entering free agency. So you got tackle and guard that are free agents. Lomu's been talked about. He can play both guard and tackle because he doesn't necessarily have he's not the biggest dude. Again, same thing with Fanu. 6'6", 304 pounds. So he's not like the thickest guy out there. So there's going to be some concerns with people talking about his size and if he can hold on to the outside. But like sticking him inside potentially could work. But the thing is, when you're looking at the Texans, I think Pregnon could work from Oregon, Basantis from Texas A&M. I think these are two options here as well. And I almost went with these guys. But the reason I ended up going with Lomu is because if I had to guess between if the Texans would bring back Ingram or Brown, I would guess they bring back Ingram. That's my guess. I have no insider information or anything. So based on that, I would draft Lomu. And Ursary, if I remember correctly, was coming in as a right tackle. So you could flip him back to right tackle, play Lomu at left tackle, and do that. Or you could just play Lomu at left tackle, or right tackle, sorry. That could work too. Like again, they're going to need him to put on some weight, but he has the frame to do that. Gave up zero sacks in 12 games this past season, just 3 throughout his entire college career. Which if you look at what the Texans need, they need someone to help to keep people off of CJ Stroud. That's what they want to do. Like, he doesn't have the same amount of power. This is, again, the weight thing, the size thing. Like, 6'3", 6'6", 304 is a massive individual. But comparatively, you need him to put on more weight to get more power behind that, especially in the run game. So the lack of power is going to be a concern. And I say lack of power, it's not like he doesn't have it, but comparatively, it's not as high as some of the other guys that we've already mentioned. But in the pass game, he's very athletic. So he more than makes up for the power with athleticism. So I think you can add that to the Texans' offense. You can improve. You can get bigger. He can get bigger. He has the frame to hold it. It's not like, oh, you need him to get bigger. He doesn't have the frame. No, he has the frame. So it'll work. It's a matter of if he does that. And I think he could go sooner. I really do. I think he could go sooner in this. But I think 28, I think, is a good spot for him. And there's going to be conversation, again, like we brought up with the D tackles, like between him, Blake Miller, Monroe Freeling. Like, there's going to be options about who's the best out of those guys. But I think Lomu fits the Texans well. So I have him at 28. The Rams, their second first-round pick. So this is the third time we've done this, or fourth time, sorry, because we had the Cowboys, Jets, and Browns. But this is the first time where the second pick is the team's actual picks. The Rams were the only one of these teams who was actually good this past year. The Rams were a game away from going to the Super Bowl, and their biggest need is corner. Again, right tackle, I brought this up before, right tackle is an option, but I think they'll keep Warren McClendon there. I do. At this point, I think that's what they're going to do. So they're going to take a corner, and I've flipped back and forth about which corner this is going to be between the likes of Colton Hood, Avion Terrell, Brandon Cisse, Chris Johnson, sorry. I've flipped back and forth between all these guys, and I ended up going with Colton Hood from Tennessee. Like, I think there's the top two guys, and then whatever order you want, it's kind of the same thing with the D tackles. You could have a bunch of different things on why you think this guy's better than this guy, but I think Colton Hood from Tennessee, same school as Jermon McCoy, though they never played with each other because Hood transferred in this past offseason and McCoy never played. So it kind of doesn't really work there. But I did see this as well, like people talking about like they could go double dip and take McCoy and Hood at corner because they need those spots so bad. If there's a team that would do that, it'd be the Rams. I mean, when Aaron Donald retired, they drafted Jared Verse and Braden Fisk from Florida State, both from Florida State, both D linemen. Obviously, one's an edge rusher, one's an interior guy, but two guys from the same school. Like, I think that if there's a team that would do that, it would be the Rams. But in this situation with Mekhi Lemon going there, I think Colton Hood at 29, if he's here, I think it would make a lot of sense. You look at Roger McCreary, listen to the corners there, all got. Kobe Durant, Darion Kendrick, Roger McCreary, and Akila Weatherspoon are all set to all set to enter free agency this offseason. I'm not saying they'll all leave, but they're all set to enter free agency. And Hood's not like the most physically imposing prospect. He's only, I say only, he's 6 foot 195 pounds, but he plays with excellent speed, excellent toughness for that quote unquote lack of size. Because you look at some of the better corner like Surtain or Gonzalez, like we brought up before, they're lengthy individuals. So there's going to be some people that are concerned about like length with some of these corners, but I think Colton Hood makes up for that with speed and toughness, which I think is what the Rams would like to have on the defensive side of the ball. He's not afraid to put his hands on receivers either. We talk about the toughness. He's not afraid to put his hands on receivers, which is not, like, sometimes hurts him, but I think he's smart enough to make those plays and put himself in good enough positions to where that doesn't ultimately hurt him with penalties. I don't think that'll be a big issue, and I think that's, again, will work well with what they want to do. You look at that game against the Seahawks. The most glaring need was corner. So you get Hood here at 29, I think it'll be a very good value pick for the Rams if you can't get one of the top two guys. And I think that if you ended the first round, like if you look at some of these teams, and obviously I'm biased because I made this mock draft, but if you look at these teams, like the Jets, come out of the first round with Reuben Bay and Peter Woods. Then you look at the Cowboys coming away with Jermon McCoy and TJ Parker. Then you look at who's the other? Cleveland Browns coming to Spencer Fano and Denzel Boston. And now the Rams with Mekhi Lemon and Colton Hood. I think all four of those teams can hold their head high if those are the things they come out with in this first round. 30, the Denver Broncos, C.J. Allen from Georgia, linebacker. This is a spot I could see Kenyon Sadiq going here fairly easily. He fights what Sean Payton likes from his tight end spot, that joker role or whatever. But C.J. Allen, the Broncos are going to need to upgrade their linebacker spot. Alex Singleton is entering free agency this offseason, as is Justin Strnad. They're entering free agency this offseason. Getting another linebacker in here like C.J. Allen, Again, we talk about strengthening their strength. Their defense was elite this past season. It was one of the best defense in the league. You put them and the Texans as the top 2 defense in the league probably. Like, you look at what those 2 teams did, a lot of their success was based off of what their defenses did. And I think C.J. Allen just continuing to strengthen that. And he's a natural leader. You listen to what people talk about him at Georgia. 88 tackles, 47 solo tackles, 3.5 sacks this past season while leading one of the best defenses in the country. Very intelligent player, flashes excellent instincts while also being very physical in the run game. And while also with opposing offensive linemen as well. He has very good recovery speed in there as well. And the leadership thing, which shouldn't come as a surprise from a Georgia linebacker. So I think that if he's available at 30, I think he'd be a very solid pick. He could go, I wouldn't be shocked if he fell in the second round. I wouldn't. But I could see a team like the Cowboys at 20. I could see a team like the Panthers at 19. The Bills, we talked about before. I think these are teams that could potentially take C.J. Allen. And I could see a team like the Bucks. Let's say Sonny Styles is not available there. Maybe you see him go as high as 15. Maybe that's a little rich. But at this point, I could see him going anywhere. And I think that at this, and I'm talking about even second round. I'm not even just talking about first round. I'm talking about second round too. I think if Denver wants to continue doing what they built, what they want to build on what they did this past season, I think getting a guy like C.J. Allen with the already great defense that they have, I think would be a very good pick for them at 30. And then 31, the New England Patriots, I have them taking Max Ianachor from Arizona State. This is a off to tackle, very raw, probably the most raw prospect in the entire draft. He's only started playing football in junior college. Him and his parents immigrated from Nigeria when he was 13 years old. And again, he started playing football in junior college. And now we're talking about him being a potential first-round draft pick. Like, that's craziness. Absolutely craziness. Again, super raw. Super raw. But he has all the physical tools that you would love to see at a tackle at the next level. He could realistically, if he's developed the right way, could become the best offensive lineman in this draft. Could. I'm not saying he will, but he could because of the physical tools that he has. If you're looking at the Patriots, with Will Campbell getting absolutely blown up in the Super Bowl, and this is not a replacement for Will Campbell. I'm not saying that they're going to ship Will Campbell off after one season. And Mike Vrabel's been very adamant that he's their left tackle. He's our left tackle. We're not moving to guard. He's our left tackle. And I respect that. And Will Campbell, he struggled with some consistency throughout the back half of the season. I know there was some talk about a knee injury and all that. But they need to improve their offensive line in general. And I can see one of the guards, we keep talking about Basantis, we keep talking about Pregnon from Oregon. Like, we keep talking about these guys. Those are two options there. You look at the defensive side of the ball, edge rusher. I think R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma makes a lot of sense for the New England Patriots here. Fits what they want to do. But I think Ianachor, with the ceiling that he has, and I know Morgan Moses is potentially leaving this offseason, but if you're able to keep him and have Ianachor right behind him, you have a very good contingency plan for them going forward at the tackle position. Now, maybe they don't want to have a contingency plan. Maybe they want a guy to come in right away, and that's where you enter him with the guards. Because I've seen them talk about moving on from Garrett Bradbury this offseason and having an opening at guard. And moving, I'm completely blanking on the guard, moving him to center. So you have an opening at guard. So I could see a reality where that happens. But Ianachor, I could see the Eagles, really, I could see them taking him at 23. I really could. We talk about contingency plans and like high ceilings and stuff like that. He could fit what the Eagles want to do. And that would cause some players to drift down. And you could look at like Blake Miller going here. But I just think Blake Miller's right now is going to wind up being a higher prospect at this point than Ianachor. But again, you look at the skill set that he has. After only playing football since JUCO, he's super explosive out of his stance. He was a soccer player growing up. That's all he played was soccer. He's super explosive out of his stance. Has a lot of raw strength and absorbs a lot of pressure from opposing pass rushers, using his athleticism to redirect them as well. And he has a lot of natural strength that we talked about before, using that in the run game to his benefit, which is very powerful in the run game. And his athleticism allows him to get to the second level. Now, again, he's going to be very, very raw. Sometimes he allows the defenders to get to his chest, which is not what you really want, but he has the length to keep him at bay. But sometimes he still needs to develop that overall ability to keep them off of him and not giving up his chest like that. So if he's able to do that, if they're able to hold on to Morgan Moses, I think he could be a very, very good tackle for the Patriots. I think he'd be a very, very good tackle for the Patriots. I think he could be a natural fit there for the Patriots as well, which is why I have him going number 31. And the Seattle Seahawks at 32, the last pick, Super Bowl champions, I am taking Avion Terrell from Clemson. You have Josh Jobe and Tariq Woolen entering free agency this offseason. You need a corner. I know there's going to be talk about guard. There's going to be some talks around there at guard. I know they drafted Gray Zabel last year in the first round, but you can still get another guard in there on the other side. So there's going to be talks about that. Corner, though, is the biggest area of need for the Seahawks, given Woolen, given Jobes entering free agency. I think those are two very good players. It doesn't seem like Tariq Woolen's going to be coming back next year, so you're going to have that hole there regardless. And I think Terrell, who people have kind of flipped back and forth between a nickel guy and an outside corner, and that's mostly because he's not the biggest. He's only 5'11", $180 listed, but he holds really well when guarding the deep routes. And I think the thing that drew me more to it, because realistically, if Colton Hood was here, I would have probably had Colton Hood here too. And I think that's because of the aggressiveness. And he might not have had a pick this past year. He didn't have a single pick this last year. But what I do like is that he has the versatility in there. He tallied 3 sacks, forced 5 fumbles in this season. Like, no picks, fine, but he's still making up plays in the pass game. It's not like he's a complete liability in the secondary, but he's still able to make plays around the field. Like, you look at Devin Witherspoon, what the Seahawks were able to do with him in the Super Bowl, I think is massive. Devin Witherspoon caused so many problems for Drake May in that game and could have realistically won the MVP of the Super Bowl in my mind. He could have very well done that. And I think Avion Terrell is that aggressive nature that Mike McDonald would love. And I'm seeing that I put Brian Flores in there on accident, so I'll have to change that. But regardless, able to line up inside or the outside, I think Terrell's energy would add a lot to the Seahawks' already great secondary. So that is the first round of Mock Draft 1.0. That's Mock Draft 1.0 for you, ladies and gentlemen. So positions drafted. There were 2 quarterbacks, 1 running back, 6 receivers, 1 tight end, 6 offensive linemen, tackles, 1 interior offensive lineman, 2 interior defensive tackles, 5 edge rushers, if you include Arvell Reese, so 4 or 5, 3 linebackers, so 2 or 3, because if you include Arvell Reese, 4 corners and 2 safeties. And I said I would mention some people that I didn't have in the first round. And those are Akeem Mesidor, who I think could very well, I've seen some people have him go as high as 12 to the Cowboys. He could very well easily be a top 15 pick. But again, he turns 25 before the draft. That has nothing to do with him as a player, but being a 25-year-old edge rusher, I have a hard time envisioning some teams looking at that and go, we're going to take you in the first round. Talent-wise, he was great this past year. Great production, was great throughout their playoff run all the way to the national championship game. He was a great player for Miami with Ruben Bain. One of the best defensive lines in college football this past year. But as a prospect, a 25-year-old edge rusher, I don't really see at this point being a first-round draft pick. It has nothing to do with how good he was at Miami. But just the age situation, I think, will weigh heavily in there. Cassius Howell is another one here. Not an age thing. Cassius Howell, I've got no problem with the age. And I think Cassius Howell might be the most explosive edge rusher in this draft. Quickest edge rusher in this draft. The problem is, he's 6'2", listed. There's going to be some people out there who look at like a team like the Buccaneers with Todd Bowles. I think he'd be a nice fit with Todd Bowles in that defense. But if you're a smaller edge rusher, there's going to be some questions about you holding the edge. There's going to be some questions about you in regards to the run game. And I think at the end of the day, that could see him fall to the first round, even though his talent suggests he should be a first-round pick, even a top 20 pick. I think a team like the Cowboys would make a lot of sense for them too. But I think, again, the length and the natural size, again, 6'2" is what he's listed at. 6'2", 248 pounds is what he's listed at. I think at the end of the day, that could hurt him in regards to getting a first-round draft pick. I think he could be a great player at the next level, but in regards to value and size, I think that will bode a little heavy at this point for Cassius Howell, even though I think his talent suggests he should be a top 20 pick. Next one, Caden Proctor. And this has nothing to do with me being an Iowan and have any sort of resentment towards Caden Proctor. It has nothing to do with that, with the fact that he was at Iowa, he's committed to Iowa from Southeast Polk, and then he decommitted to Iowa, go to Alabama, and then Nick Saban retires, and he leaves Alabama, he transfers to Iowa, goes to Carver Hawkeye Arena to greet the fans, and then he announces he's going back to Alabama. It has nothing to do with that. I just think that if you're looking at a tackle prospect in Caden Proctor, He's a monster individual. I think if you're a team like the Eagles, I could see them looking at him. He was the guy I originally had there at Philadelphia at 23 because of his size. You look at what their offensive line looked like in the Super Bowl with Mekhi Becton there at guard. Monster individual. There's a lot of questions about whether his weight. That's going to be a massive question. He's 6'7", like 366 pounds. Like, he's a monster individual. And I think at the end of the day, for the speed of edge rushers, I think there's going to be some concerns around that at the next level. And I think there's going to be people talking about him possibly just lining up at guard. And there's been some questions about effort throughout his time at Alabama as well. I don't know if that's going to be a guy you look at as a potential first-round draft pick. He could be. Like, he was the number one tackle prospect coming out of high school. Like, he's always had talent. He started as a true freshman at Alabama at left tackle. You don't do that by not being a good football player. But I do think there's some things that could halt him ultimately being a first-round draft pick, even though you look at him and go, oh my God, you're an absolute behemoth. And they compare him to Mekhi Becton, who was 11th overall pick in the draft by the Jets in 2020. Like, they'll compare him to him. But I do think the effort is there, and the size is going to be a little bit of an issue. So I have him going on the outside looking in on the draft. Then you look at Caleb Banks, a guy who blew up the Senior Bowl, got great size, people calling him Chris Jones light. But the age thing, and the production thing, and the inconsistencies, overall play, I think it'd see him drop out of the first round. But I don't think there's going to be any problems with him at the next level. I think he's got the size, got everything you look for in that aspect, but I think he'll fall on the outside looking in on the first round. But yeah, other guys that just missed out of the first round. See, Malachi Fields get talked about a lot from Notre Dame. I didn't really consider him as a first-round guy, but there's a lot of people, again, talk about Senior Bowl blow-ups. He was one of those guys. I think Zachariah Branch from Georgia could be a guy who's sneaky into the back half of the first round. Jennings Dunker, a right tackle, is at Iowa, so he could be an option there in the back half as well. We talk about Basantis. We talk about Pregnon from Oregon. Then you got Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. I think is a guy who could definitely be in that conversation for a first-round guy. R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. Again, I think he's a natural Patriot guy. If they don't take a tackle, then I think he would be the guy the Patriots pick. Zion Young, I think, is kind of similar. Jake Golday from Cincinnati. Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. He was a guy that was talking about potentially being a top 20 pick prior to the season starting. And now he's on the outside looking in the first round. Then we got the corners, Cisse and Johnson, and then Theinman from Oregon are the last guys in the top, the guys who just missed out, I guess. But, yeah, that's all I've got for you today on this Mock Draft 1.0. This is a long video, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did not, I sincerely apologize. Try to better next time. Make sure to check out the blog post down in the description below, and as well, all the different links to the social media accounts. Yeah, again, I hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, I sincerely apologize. Try to be better next time. I, of course, if your draft quote-unquote expert, Logan Blackman, and I will see you guys later. Peace.